Kurt, are you about ready back there? Are you guys ready?
I am, yeah.
Ready? Okay, so let's get our meeting started here, everyone. Normally we have the calendar at the very end, but there's a couple things I want to mention that are unusual with the next few weeks while the room is full. I thought I'd bring it up. Of course, this is our last kind of regular meeting of the year. And then next week, our meeting is actually on Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and that's just for 9 a.m., not 9 p.m., 9 a.m. And that's just for bill paying for the city, you know, just kind of housekeeping time things. And then in January, we actually skip the January 2nd meeting because, of course, it's the day after holiday. So our next actual regular type meeting will be January 8th, which is a Monday, which is when we'll seat the next commission. And then we'll go back into our regular Tuesdays. So I guess almost for 4 weeks, we kind of have a strange little schedule. So just wanted everyone to be aware of that. All right, so let's go into our regular order here of our agenda. Yes, please.
There will be a consent agenda next week as well.
Okay. And that's just claims, or will be there other items on consent agenda?
There will be non-controversial items on until they're removed.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
I
Okay.
said until they're removed.
All right, so let's go back up to the top here. All right, so first up, we normally would have recognitions or proclamations, but we don't have any. So we'll go right into our consent agenda for tonight. All matters listed below on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Members of the public wishing to speak to an item that has been pulled off of the consent agenda will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Is there an item that a member of the commission wishes to remove from the consent agenda?
Nope.
Is there anyone in the public audience tonight that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of claims for total vendors of 208 for a total amount of $6,515,372.58.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Larson, seconded by Commissioner Amix. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for passing that down. All right, next we'll go into public comment. So, addressing the commission, the public is allowed to speak to any items or issues that are not scheduled on the agenda after first being recognized by the mayor. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes for public comment. As a general practice, the commission will not discuss, debate these items, nor will the commission make decisions on items presented during this time. Rather, they will refer the items to staff for follow-up if necessary. Individuals are asked to come to the microphone, sign in, and state their name and address. Speakers should address all comments, questions to the commission. So come on up and sign in and tell us who you are and what you want to say. And this is for anything that's not on the agenda. Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Michael Allman, and this feels like a deja vu all over again. I noticed on the city manager's report that there is a discussion of the city manager's report, which I want to comment on, but as in last June 20th, my question is the city manager's report now considered an agenda item on which normally we can comment, so I should wait, or should I comment on it now? Same question I had on June 20th.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
It's the commission's call, as far as I know.
Well, I'd like to hear what the city
Okay.
manager has to say about that.
I agree with Michael, it is the commission's call ultimately, but I thought that we had that conversation, well, we did, as verified by Michael. We did have that conversation at that meeting that he references. And somehow the wires got crossed, I think, by the time we got to that particular item. I flagged the attention of at least the chair of the meeting, but I don't know that anybody else caught it either. And I think Michael was on his way up or was at the podium ready to address the issue because that's what we said we would do. And somehow we didn't do that. So that led to a comment about him addressing it. Now, if you recall at the last meeting, we had a similar situation and I said, as far as I'm concerned, people can comment on that. If you choose, however, and it, going back to his comment, you could have the discretion to allow comment under public comment about items that are on the manager's report under public comment, which may actually help the situation in terms of being able to give people that opportunity to comment on things a little earlier. Technically, I think they're different than a regular business item, agenda item, or a consent item. So you could make the distinction. I think the value might be that if you allow the comment now, you would probably have a wider audience for those issues. And as I argued, part of the point of moving public comment up and having the business of the commission take place early is because a lot of times those are the issues that attract the most interest from your public. And sometimes, like church, it's important to stay till the end of the service. But, you know, a lot of people don't seem to have that ability to do that. And so they come for their particular item and then they leave. So maybe it's a little different this time. It's still your discretion. I would allow them to comment under public comment about manager report items.
So is that something that we would add to the gray box? Because we have our text here that I read every time, is that, or maybe it would be added below on
As
the
an
city manager's
exclusion.
report.
You may, yeah, but it would be excluded because technically it has to be the definition of what is on the agenda. Personally, I would allow it either way, but if you really want to give your public an opportunity to engage, you might let them talk about it now and maybe more briefly later on. We have had people that have addressed issues that I've reported out on in the manager's report.
All right, so what's the commission thought on this? Wait, we can't do any action right now. So everyone should
No,
think
you-
about
I
it
think we can run our
and
meeting.
give, well, Tony, we can't really take any action on this item, so what would you say, how we handle this right now?
It's
It's
an
a,
interpretation.
yeah, and it's a procedural operation of the meeting, so if you wanted to have some feedback today and, you know, reach a consensus, that would be fine and appropriate.
I'd like to provide Michael the chance to speak.
Yeah, allow Michael to speak, Mayor, and have staff deal with all the technicalities if there's something else that we have to do.
So as long as it's a procedural authorization, that's acceptable. But if he wants to ask us to do something like with bike paths, obviously we cannot do that. But since we're talking about the procedure of the meeting, this is acceptable to do now. So I make sure I understand for the days when Mike is not here and can't remind us all of this happening. Okay, so any other commission thought?
I just said I think Michael should be allowed to speak on this item now.
Okay, does anyone else have any thought? Okay.
Let's hear what he's got to say.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the city manager's report. What did you want to talk about? We got to restart the clock. All right.
Well, in a way, this partially answers my question. When I brought the issue up in June, it was about bicycle priorities. I wanted to compliment the city manager and his staff for a good report, but didn't have the opportunity. And at the time, I didn't understand how significant this question is until November 7th, when there was an item on the city manager's report about nitrate water from the farmland site. And For whatever reason, many in the community were blindsided by how fast the issue moved and how little we knew about it before it was there on the agenda. So really what my concern is that there could very well be controversial items on the city manager's report. Matter of fact, I believe the Dropbox issue was an actionable item. So what I'm getting to is that there should be, and I would request basically the city commission have an agenda discussion, have an item on your agenda to discuss this and to decide if citizens have the right and the opportunity to comment on and/or pull a city manager's item. If we think it's major and considerable and significant and controversial, normally the city manager or the mayor can see that pretty readily. Like if it's a Here Kansas project or a 9th Street project, say this is a big item, we better make it an agenda item. You don't see those on the city manager's report. So sometimes citizens see that and maybe the city manager doesn't. I just think the citizens should have an opportunity to say, hey, red flag, and then we can have an agenda item to discuss it. That's really what I'd like the commission to consider as an agenda item in the future and decide how to handle that.
Thank you, Michael. We
Yeah.
appreciate this.
And we can discuss nitrate water at a later date, but it's really the protocol that I'm concerned with in anything.
Sure.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. City manager too.
Any other public comment? General public comment?
Hi, my name is Mook Bayramola. I live at 1039 New York. From A History of Lawrence, Kansas by Richard Cordley, pastor of Plymouth Congregational Church from 1857, 1875, 1889 to 1895. Quote, when the Kansas-Nebraska bill passed in May of 1854, it was everywhere felt that its passage opened Kansas to slavery. It was thought to be equivalent to making Kansas a slave state. In the natural order of things, people of Missouri would have passed into Kansas, shaped her institutions to suit themselves the rising tide of anti-slavery The rising tide of anti-slavery sentiment was rapidly centering upon one point. Slavery must not secure another foot in the public domain. Men anxious to secure another foot in the public domain, men anxious to check slavery felt that there was opportunity to do something effective. Let us settle Kansas with the people who make it free by their own voice and vote. William Seward in the United States Senate said, gentlemen of the slave states, since there's no escaping your challenge, we accept it in the name of freedom. We will engage in competition for the virgin soil of Kansas, and God give the victory to the side which is stronger in its numbers as it is right. The Immigrant Aid Company was formed in Massachusetts. Amos Lawrence was among those who gave to the movement. The first party of settlers arrived on August 1st, 1854, ate their first meal on the hill where the old university building now stands. 1863, Quantrell's Raid. As soon as the Eldridge House had surrendered, the raiders scattered all over town, taking street by street, house by house. They were not restrained, even by the common rules of law. Went about their work of death with abandon of men for whom murder was a pastime and pity a stranger. Other raids were for plunder. The Lawrence raid was for slaughter. Its excessive brutality shows its roots ran back to the old pro-slavery hate of 6 years before. Its inspiration and venom sprang from the same soil which produced the Wakarusa War and the troubles of 1856. The border ruffians of 1856 became the bushwhackers of 1863. Why excerpt from a 122-year-old book, you may ask? There have been 2 public events in Lawrence, Kansas this year, where the symbol of racism, slavery, and in our case, slaughter, has made an appearance in the very heart of our downtown, named after the state that sent the first settlers. The old-fashioned Christmas parade on December 2nd featured 2 riders.
You got to wrap it up. Sorry, we have a 3-minute time limit. So the first one was the horse parade. What was the second one?
St. Patrick's Day parade
Thank
with the
you.
Georgia state flag.
Thank you.
May I continue?
You got to wrap it up, though, please.
Yes. I can. So I ask you, are we just a town that likes to reminisce about our history over a pint of John Brown's Ale at Free State Brewery, or one that shows more loyalty than we show to our college teams? Do we really honor and respect the hundreds of our dead buried at Oak Hill Cemetery? I want to believe that the answer is the latter. If the answer is the latter, we must at once stop giving public funds to any organization or event that cannot guarantee that they will not disrespect our dead. The Transient Guest Tax Grant Program may not be directly funded by the tax money of the citizens of Lawrence, but the city is the arbiter of these public funds, and it arbits it in our name. Amos Lawrence, Charles Robinson, Richard Cordley, and hundreds of our ancestors are rolling in their graves, seeing Lawrence, after all of their sacrifice, fall into the hands of pro-slavery normalizers. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
You could invite her to present all of her comments for the record.
Right now, as of this
I think-
moment?
Right, because she had prepared comments, and we,
In a
we're-
written form.
Yeah, so Casey, can you perhaps do a photocopy of her comments and distribute them to the rest of the commission tonight? Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
thank you.
Any other public comment tonight for items not on the agenda?
If I can make a slight statement on that. Hi, Liz. How you doing? My name is Kay Traver. I am the chair of the Lawrence St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee. I've been on the committee for 25 years, since I was 19 years old. And at no time have we ever endorsed any type of political endorsements for any entries that have come in. That has been something that has been on our entries of all kinds. The particular thing that she saw of last year was an entry from a gentleman who had the original Mississippi state flag, which, if you look at that, is where the Confederate flag came from. Like, they took that from that. It was a part of a quarter of that flag. At no point did the Lawrence St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee at any time endorse anything of that sort. He had a flag of every original state from the United States on his float, and I don't think it was meant to be in any way in any sort of negative political statement. We are definitely going to, in the future, as it is clearly hitting people in a negative way, try to get our volunteers to make sure that they can look at the entries before they get onto the parade route, to make sure that there's going to be nothing negative in that way. But we have never endorsed any sort of negative or any actually kind of political type of thing in our past 30 years. We're going on to our 31st parade. We're very proud of that. I'm very proud to be the chair of this parade and feel that we do everything that we can to promote a wonderful Lawrence official, wonderful old-fashioned parade that suits the values of people in Lawrence. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Kay. Any other public comment? This is for items not on the agenda. We've been talking about items that were already on the agenda. So items that are not on the agenda would be really great. Okay, so now let's go to the regular agenda. The public is allowed to speak to any regular agenda item or give public comment after first being recognized by the mayor. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes. That's our shot clock over there for public comment. Individuals are asked to come to the microphone, sign in, state their name and address. Speakers should address all comments, questions to the commission. Number 1, conduct public hearing to consider a request for a vacation of utility easements in Fairfield Farms East, edition number 1. It was on the 2G2.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Dave Cronin, City Engineer. This item is a request to vacate utility easements that were dedicated by separate instrument for the Fairfield East Addition plat. This area is being replatted in different phases, so with the future phasing of the replat, they will be dedicating easements on those plats, and I think even one of those was on tonight's consent agenda for a portion of this area. So we've followed our normal process by notifying adjacent property owners within 200 feet of this vacation, and utility companies as well, and received no objections. And so staff is recommending vacating these easements, and the action items to hold a public hearing, and then pending any discussion, approve the vacation. The easements are highlighted on here with the yellow for the
I think I
area.
heard you say that part of it was on the consent agenda and part of it is on the regular agenda?
Yeah, an area of this original plat that's being replatted was on tonight's consent agenda. I think it was Fairfield Farms number 6, I believe, which was just a segment of this area. So it's being replatted in different phases.
I guess I'm confused as to why part of it's on the consent and why part of it's on the regular. Like, why wouldn't we do all of it on one? And it seems a little strange that way.
The plats are on items that are on consent agenda. When we do vacation of easements, those are on the regular agenda because there's a public hearing. Because these easements were dedicated by separate instrument and it wasn't part of the original plat, that's why we're going through this public hearing process. If it was originally platted and being replatted, it could just all be a consent item. So it's a little unique in a way, but that's the reason why it's on the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you.
But
Two separate and distinct actions.
the item that's on the planning commission was just, it's an acceptance of dedications and easements on a final plat.
Yeah, it's just, there's two different ways to deal with easements, and when we have a minor subdivision that contained plats or easements on one document, we usually just keep it with that application, and then this is a separate application because it extends past the consent agenda item area, as I understand.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Just
Go ahead.
one question. So the yellow highlighted areas are all of the areas that are to be vacated, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
What is the preliminary plat that's attached, where it says a preliminary plat, and I call that up and it looks like a whole different map?
So this is a preliminary plat of that area, and again, it's being final platted in phases. So, and Sandy's walking up here to hopefully clarify the phasing, but I think phase 2 was the one that was approved tonight.
The document that you see with your requested vacation goes with a document, a final plat of that property that was previously approved. The applicant moved forward with a very small portion of that original project in this area, but because of a number of utility plans, they ended up dedicating additional easement outside of the area that they recorded through that particular final plat by separate instrument. Since that time, they have really come back and revised their development pattern, adding more curvilinear streets. So that is the subdivision plat, the first phase that we have seen. The next phase that was on your consent agenda covers this area that establishes lots. It's roughly outlined, I think, here in this red area. So the easements that are shown in the vacation don't line up with the final plat that you considered earlier on your consent agenda. So it's more about change in the development pattern from what was approved 10 years ago to how they're developing now. Does that help?
Any other questions for staff? Is this the land that went to foreclosure? I don't know if you know that, or,
No, it's south of that land. That was, the foreclosed land was in a commercial district to the north.
okay. I was hoping it was.
Yeah, there's pretty active development here with single-family homes if you drive out there.
But there's still nothing coming for the commercial stuff across the street then?
No.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, we'll go to public comment. Was this a formal hearing? Are you guys pointing out what I'm,
I move to open a public hearing.
thank you.
Second.
All right, motion made by Vice Mayor Boley, seconded by Commissioner Amix to open the public hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So the official public hearing is now open. Looks like we have our first speaker. Come on up and sign in. And do you need help with the Elmo up there, perhaps?
My name is Brent Ketter. I purchased a home in this area in June, and I just have a couple of questions, I guess, for the commission around this. I received the notice about these plats and the easements, and I talked to people in my neighborhood, and we received the original map that was out there, but not the actual map of the plats. So there's some uncertainty around what areas we're actually looking at, where the easements are actually going, how that lines up with what we're trying to do as far as building around fences and things of that nature. And I guess I'm just hoping that you guys can help clarify a little bit better, whether we can look at this and readdress so that we actually know what we're looking at, because it seems a little bit misleading at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mary, can you take a look at it, or Scott, take a look at this map and,
Well, and I would ask Dave Cronin, I'm not sure there's a real sense of urgency from the applicant's perspective if we want to take the time to meet with neighbors and kind of overlay the plats against each other.
If timing isn't of urgency, I think it'd probably be best to continue this hearing and somehow allow for the public to come in and walk through. If they're concerned about issues of easement or vacation of easement, it would be best to walk them through their lots to talk about whether they have encroached in those areas or not, and if this is going to be an issue for them so that that's cleared up. And sometimes that's just getting a comfort level with what's going on. I presume you had surveyors do all of this work and lay this all out. Is that right?
Yeah, and the applicant's here to address that. But this is the map that was sent out to the adjacent property owners that had the areas that were highlighted. They weren't originally shown on the original plat.
But did we have any kind of interaction with the neighborhood at all?
We didn't. We sent out the notice. A few neighbors asked, called me and asked questions about the process and what was going on, and I explained it to them. I don't know if...
So is there any harm in giving more time to this process so that the neighbors can at least ask those questions?
Not from my standpoint.
Okay.
The applicant's here too.
All right.
Well, maybe I can help clarify, and yeah, I'd be more than willing to work with the neighbors and kind of establish what we're doing and why we're doing it. But essentially, kind of...
will you state your name?
sorry,
Thank you.
I'm Aaron Gaspers with CFS Engineers. And pretty much what we're looking at is the original sanitary sewer benefit district was constructed prior to the establishment of this first plat that you see up on your screen. So those easements that we are now currently vacating were established as part of that original benefit district. Then this plat that you see in front of you was established and filed. Since then, that next preliminary plat that you saw came in and revised this layout. Essentially, these easements that were established by separate instrument don't fit the new preliminary plat. So what we did is easements that were established by plat can be vacated by the next plat, but procedure-wise, if they were established by separate instrument, we have to vacate them. So to make them fit the new plat, we're going to vacate these easements and then establish the new easements with the new lot configuration with these phase plats. The second one, the first one has already happened. The second one was the one on the consent, and then there'll be future plats that will establish the needed easements consistent with the current preliminary plat layout. I'm not sure if that helps or hurts.
Mayor, I guess I would just. These are vacating easements. The easements that would affect any development in the neighborhood have already been established by plat, and those lots sold to individuals and homes built on them. So we're not adding any restrictions to the plat. We're, in fact, removing them because they're not necessary anymore.
You know, when I hear this conversation, it reminds me that I do speak a foreign language. And I suspect that our public feels somewhat that way as well. When you start talking about land use and zoning and subdividing and preliminary and final plats, it gets a little complicated, maybe for first-time home buyers or even second home buyers. So I still think that there's value in just giving them an opportunity to sit down and walk through those items, especially if time isn't of the essence to get this all done.
Is that amenable to you to continue the public hearing for further public discussion?
And we try and have this back on the January what meeting?
Which, let me get the
8th.
we'll get the calendar out.
16th.
16.
We got all kinds of changes going on.
Yes, that, the 16th would be fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Well, I guess any questions before Aaron walks away for the applicant? Okay, any other public comment, knowing that we're going to continue this public hearing for better discussion until January 16th?
In the interim, my expectation would be that staff would work with the developer to orchestrate some sort of opportunity for people to come in either at a meeting or that they could ask additional questions to get any of their individual issues resolved. But what was on tonight was a vacation of existing easements, which is, I understand it, and trying to convey in layman's terms, is that because of some replanning, those original easements did not really fit this plan any longer, so we vacated, and then in the replat, those easements will be added to the replat in terms of designating the places where those utilities would go.
So do we need a motion to continue?
Yes.
I'd make a
Okay.
motion to continue the public hearing and asking our staff and the developer to work with the neighbors to clear up any matters that deal with the vacation, and we continue this to January 16th of 2018.
Motion made by Commissioner Amick, seconded by Vice Mayor Boley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your patience, Aaron. Okay, so now we're on to number 2. So we're going to conduct a public hearing for Plasticon Healthcare, LLC, Catalyst Incentive Package to accommodate an expansion and consider the following items related to the request. And it looks like we have 2 items that we'll be able to do in one motion.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Britt Krumkana with the City Manager's Office. Tonight, you have before you a request from a established Lawrence manufacturer in East Hills Business Park for participation in the Catalyst Incentive Program. I'm going to just very briefly recap that program, and then I'll turn over the presentation to the applicant so she can give an update on the project as well as a little additional background on the company. We are fortunate to have Sandy Dixon from Plasticon here tonight, so she's been wonderful to work with, and she has a lot of good information about her project.
Britt, I'm going to interrupt you a second. It looks like there was a large group that just went in to talk with planning staff about the previous item. So I just want to make sure if there's anyone left in the audience that was here for that item, they've all gone into the planning office if you'd like to join them in there. Okay, thank you, Britt, sorry.
No problem. The Catalyst is a new incentive program that was just approved last April, I believe. It's a temporary program. It's meant to be streamlined, and it's meant to induce industrial development. Originally within our two public business parks, Lawrence Venture Park and East Hills Business Park, and then later on in 2017, the program was expanded to allow for industrial development and incentivizing certain projects if they met thresholds throughout the rest of the Lawrence community. Basically, because this is a streamlined approach, if a project meets certain requirements of the program, they don't have to go through all the processing that a normal traditional incentive request would go through. And those requirements are outlined here. For the most part, it has to be a taxable project and a taxable entity. They have to be in good standing with all the local laws. They need to be current on their taxes. And then probably the biggest requirement is construction requirements, and those vary depending on where they're going to locate. For this particular project, they are asking for an expansion onto their existing facility in East Hills Business Park. So the size minimum for that is 15,000. This particular project is anticipated to build a 50,000 square foot project, so there's no problem with them meeting the size requirements. Typically, what the Catalyst Assistance Package delivers is a property tax abatement, either 50%, or if the project is built to LEED Silver equivalency, then it can also get a 70% tax abatement. IRB, in order to get a exemption on sales taxes for construction materials, I will point out that this particular project is not going to go that route because they are anticipating getting a sales tax exemption through a state program instead of through the IRB. And then we typically would provide city-owned land at no cost if they were building in Lawrence Venture Park. Again, that doesn't apply. The state property tax the state personal property tax exemption applies no matter what. And then we also waive application fees. So just quickly here, the Catalyst program is really, all they're requesting is the property tax abatement. They do plan to build to LEED Silver equivalency, so their application has indicated 70%. If they don't make that equivalency, then they would qualify for a 50%. No land is involved since they're building on their own land in East Hills Business Park. And of course, there's no IRB, as I mentioned. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy Dixon, who is the general manager of Plasticon, and let her tell you a little bit more about the company and the project. Thank you, Britt.
Do you have my project preloaded? I
Hi, Mayor Soden and Commissioners, thank you very much for hearing our application for the Catalyst Program incentives. I want to thank you for spending time and hearing a little bit about Plasticon and what we're doing. So I'm Sandy Dixon, and I'm the General Manager at Plasticon Healthcare. I've been there since 2011 when we purchased that site. We are a contract manufacturing company. That's what we do. We specialize in making we don't actually private label any of our own products. We make them for other people. Our company actually celebrated our 35th anniversary this year. We are privately held since 1982. We are a full service provider of custom products. Everything plastic. We service both the automotive, medical, and consumer markets, giving us a 3-product platform to make us exceptionally stable. We have state-of-the-art facilities with over 1 million square feet and over 1,500 team members worldwide. So we are ISO certified, which means we have compliance audits every year, in addition to FDA audits at our site. And we have a solid track record of success with sustainable growth. So part of the sustainable growth is our proven execution on building. We've had it over 800,000 of that 1 million square feet over the last 9 years. And this is a slide that demonstrates from China to Kentucky all of the different building projects and expansion projects that we've done, all of which have been delivered on time and on budget with financial discipline for healthy balance sheets. We are a U.S. plastics supplier. We are the 6th in the nation, and to get that ranking, it's a combination of annual sales, which is a 3-year sales growth, safety, manufacturing space, number of machines, and on-time delivery. This is just a pictorial of some of our product mixes. The ones made at our plant are the pink container on the second on the top row, and at the very bottom, that's some of our current product offerings. Some of the other parts you see here are med devices. Also, there's some auto parts on there, and some things for even the military. Our 3-way product platform, these are some of our valued partners in case you're not familiar with our corporate oversight. The very top part of that is some of our medical partners from Beckman Coulter to Thermo Fisher, Alcon, Optiscan, Johnson & Johnson. In the middle there you see some of our consumer products. We make the Apple displays and the Apple, if you go into an Apple store, all of the plastic displays are made by Plasticon. We do some things for Cisco, Light Factory, Lexar, and then of course what we started out on back in the beginning was in auto. We're a tier 1 supplier to a lot of companies, of which we are a showcase supplier for Toyota. We make a lot of the plastic parts that you drive around in your Toyota cars, the Camrys and the Highlanders. We also assisted Tesla with their battery build. We're one of the ones that helped them come out with their batteries. So we have a lot of different things in the auto industry, and that's why we're so successful. Each one of those is about 1/3 of our business. Our global footprint stretches from China through the U.S. down to Mexico. Our headquarters is in Hayward, California. And of course, Litchfield, Kentucky is another one of our big auto plants. Detroit's a sales office, and of course, Lawrence, Kansas. Here's where the star, right? Plasticon's mission, what's made us so good is we always make sure we develop the best quality plastic products and incorporate all the newest technologies to maintain cost and quality advantages. And also one of our key mission statements is contributing to the community environment. So as you can see on the right, quality, safety, human resources, because it's our people that make our business, all roll up to customer satisfaction for our success. So going back to those community and environmental impact statements, some of the benefits that we do offer, and our expansion will be even greater, is that some of the local economy benefits. We're going to have a lot of client visitors, spending on lodging, entertainment, food and beverages, planned, hopefully grand openings. Local businesses will profit because we're going to be doing a lot of getting our building supplies and some of our subs here, of course, local, and of course, services for construction. Employee benefits. So we have seen this through our employment from 2011 till today. We have employed people and started them out at the $10 an hour, $11 an hour range, and now some of them are making $47,000 a year. And with their benefits and the surge in medical and dental, you can just see them coming into being a whole new person, and we like to see that, including with all of our onboarding programs and all of our medical, dental, and vision, and other things that we offer to our employees. We have, with increased margins, with all the new things that we're going to add, we'll be able to improve our local philanthropy efforts in the local community. We do a lot, but we feel like we don't do enough. Right now we have a small group of people, so the larger the people group, the more things you can do. Employment, we're going to focus on local hires and make secure career ladders for each employee. That's part of what we do as a business. And of course, this whole thing for environmental is going to be because of our ISO 14001 impact. That certification is for environmental. And so there's an ongoing commitment to that. We get audited to that every year. And of course, with our new expansion, we'll be doing some green space enhancement and making sure we have appropriate LED lighting directed, LEED Silver compliance, and we'll be looking at our energy management and recycling as a focus. So we are an FDA-registered facility. We make 3 different kinds of products there, medical devices, drug products, and we do also have a food registration for nutritional supplements. We do, in our current manufacturing, we formulate. You can see the different tanks there. I'm not going to read them out for you, but we also have several low-fill seal machines and a low-viscosity piston filler, and we do final product packaging. We also have an on-site QC laboratory with chemists and microbiologists with a variety of tests that we do. Training, this is very important just for not just for our career ladders, but to meet all the compliance regulations for the FDA and ISO. We have internal training systems to support comprehensive maintenance and blow-fill seal technicians along with our quality personnel. We have internal training skills, and we also have external, so we utilize Peasley Tech quite a bit. We have 2 people currently going through the state-offered program to be able to get a little certificate and card that says that they are, well, it's part of one of the new programs that they have. We also work with Flint Hills, University of Kansas, and K-State. That's because we have a big diversity program, so we have to include the K-State people. And we love their programs. We do a lot with their engineering groups. Added technologies and capabilities that we'll be doing. We have a transfer of injection molding technology to expand our capabilities. So our other sites do a lot of injection molding. We'll be bringing 3 new aseptic injection molding sites, and that'll be in phase 1 of this project. So we are required to be operational by 4th quarter 2018, so it's going to be a very fast-paced project. Right on the heels of that, we have an aseptic vial filling with terminal sterilization for an injectable drug product. We also have a whole set of non-sterile oral drug products in a sealed cup format that launches for nursing homes and hospitals. And we also have an injection stretch mold technology coming in for large volume drug products with a project launch in 2019. And of course, we have additional BFS capability, that's blow-fill seal, what we currently have for ophthalmics and inhalation projects. So we have several of those coming up, and of course we have a sales pipeline set for additional clients that will come through in 2018 and 2019, with some products coming up all the way through 2022. That of course might take another expansion. So right now I wanted to go through a little bit of staffing and CapEx that we're expending on from Plasticon. The first phase that we're going to do is a 50,000 square foot expansion. Right now we have about 28, 29, depending if you count one of the temps that we have, employees. The average salary, including the temporaries that we have, that are temp to perm once they meet their hours, is $45,000 a year. The capital expenditure that we're going to do on that 50,000 square foot is approximately $4.2 million. So in that is a build-out project for those aseptic injection molding suites, which is an additional 13 people, keeping that average salary at the same rate, with a capital expenditure for the equipment of $3.1 million. As you can see through phase 3 and phase 4, which we have not settled on a timeline for that, but they are projected to be at the end of 2018, but it could be 2019 for those build-outs, is raising the average salary by 1,000 because of the new technology coming in, with a total number of people through the ophthalmic project at 61, and another $5 million to put those internal suites in. After that, we're going to have to build another building. So hopefully by the time we're at phase 2, we'll be coming to talk to you about that one. So our site expansion, and this is a pre-conceptual design, so bear with me in that some of these things that you're going to see are into the future, is like a 7 to 10 year plan. The yellow part that you see on your screen is the existing building. It's 45,000 square feet. This was an original 200,000 square feet expansion. Right now we've got this divided up into several phases. So the first 50,000 square feet would be what we're calling phase 1 now. This was a older slide. And then we're going to continue punching west on our westward expansion route until we consume all that you see there in the blue, at which time we will be adding another space as what is designated here in phase 3, and of course then saving the northern half, northern half here for an extra expansion if needed. After that, we might have to talk to you about Venture Park. So this is an artist's rendition of the pre-conceptual. So the thing that you need to keep in mind is since this is a phased building, all of the mass differences on a lot of the architecture here in the front will have to be done as time goes on. So we will, as we expand on some of that first phase and into that blue area that you saw earlier, then you'll see this piece that's very nice that covers up what right here is the solid tan is what the existing building is. This is just an artist's rendition of the internal space. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your consideration, and I'd also like to thank Diane Stoddard and Britt Crum-Cano for all of their help and assistance getting all the documents ready. And I do believe that Larry would like to, Larry McElwain from the Chamber would like to say a few words.
Okay, hold on a sec. Is there any questions for the applicant, first of all? We're very excited that you're expanding. Any questions for the applicant?
No, you.
Okay, very thorough
Thank you.
presentation. Thank you. Now, Larry, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. That was very thorough. There's not much I can add other than the fact that we in the business community, we at the Chamber are very supportive of this project. We're glad that it was able to qualify for the Catalyst program to help them with that. This project precedes my employment with the Chamber by about 6 months. So this has been quite a long process, a lot of meetings, a lot of stress for Sandy to shepherd this program and get it to the form it's in now. But I think you can see from the audio-visual, or the PowerPoint, that this has been, everything's been looked at, and they worked with city staff, done a great job there. So we were very supportive. We look at the fact that it's an existing business, been here since 2004. They're going to increase their employment. They've got the land. It's just west of where they are right now, and it's going to be a great project. So I encourage your support of their request for the tax abatement. So
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions for staff? We kind of skipped Britt there for a second. Any questions for her before we go to public
I
comment?
have one question for staff. On the LEED certification, how do we track that?
Well, what we did for 800 New Hampshire, if you recall the Pocahontas project, is we required a letter from the lead architect of the project that certified that it met LEED Silver equivalency. We also required a LEED scorecard be filled out so that we could see how many points the project actually did earn. And that, in the past, has been what we've required.
Okay, thank you, Britt.
Any other questions for staff?
For staff, can I ask Sandy something I just thought of?
Sure. Sandy, come on up. We got a question for you.
Sandy, a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, I had the opportunity that you took us, me and a group of people on a tour of your building. And I was fascinated by how clean an industry that you all have, and everything is, seemed like a very sterile environment. And as we look at a construction project like this, that's got to play just some fits on your day-to-day operation, while at the same time you're having this expansion going on. You're all ready for that part, right?
Oh, yes. So this is nothing new. I've had 30 plus years, not to date myself, but in the business. I helped on the Sanofi Pasteur pandemic building that was built in Swiftwater, several Merck projects. And so there's all kinds of things that will happen online to ensure that the building that we build does not impact the current activities on site. So basically, there'll be a lot of protocols in place to actually cleave that off. And the best part is that the building that we're building is directly to the west. The building that we're in right now used to be owned by Serologics, and they had a 5 to 10-year plan themselves, and they already had an expansion. So they already have an expansion portal built into the building, which will limit any egress in and out of the plant. And we basically should be able to do probably 98% of the build-out without entering any of the spaces that we currently have. And then the only time that they'll really have to go into it, and it won't be the sterile spaces, it'll be into our utility room, because the control panels and all the utilities were made in duplicate at the time the building was built so that they could be connected up. So there should be enough power and control to service, put service out to the other building.
Thank you. I know, just one other thing about Plasticon and Sandy. Plasticon is fantastic business from everything that I got to see on the tour, but Sandy and the work that you do with Peaslee Tech, and I want to thank you for that. I mean, it's amazing to see this individual and the energy that you have in so many things, but also to be able to have some of our early classes from Peaslee Tech and the Plasticon facility. I know that there was a class that was going on the day that we were there for the tour, so it's I want to thank you and Plasticon. I just think it's a great project for our community.
Well, thank you very much. We have actually a vested interest in Peaslee. As you said the day that you came, and I had forgotten about that we were hosting the first Peaslee class because Peaslee wasn't ready yet. And I said, well, I need it anyway. So we moved it into Plasticon so that we could actually give the first course. Because my people needed it, and what they need to have to be able to do their jobs. And so there's a little bit of a vested interest in making sure that that goes through, which is why I'm also involved both from the Peaslee Tech board as vice president on the board, and then also on the chamber with one of the new groups that's going to be looking at workforce, because I'll be growing my company and I need to make sure we have workforce and training for them, as well as not being selfish, but also for the rest of the manufacturing groups as well. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I also had the opportunity this summer to tour Plasticon, and I'll tell you, I guess as somebody who had never been in the facility, what I understood of it was vastly different than what I saw. You know, you kind of picture it as it's a plastics facility, and in your mind you have this kind of assembly line notion, and I was blown away. It's an amazing operation you're running there, and as the younger sibling of 2 microbiologists who have had to leave Lawrence to find opportunity, I was. It kind of warmed my heart to see that you have a lab there that's offering opportunity for people and stopping some of that brain drain that occurs in our community, unfortunately. So,
well, tell them if they want to move back, let me know.
Well, I try all the time.
I have plenty of opportunities in the lab. I myself am a microbiologist, so I graduated from KU. So I have a community interest as well there.
Well, thank you for that.
You know, and Sandy, I remember when we did that tour this summer that you had an employee there that actually developed some tooling that made your processes go much faster. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have an engineer who graduated from KU with a degree in engineering, and he also went to Peaslee Tech. After that, I paid for him to go and get an associate's type degree that they offer there through Flint Hills, because he had a lot of brain power and he needed to get it to flow out through his fingers. But through that process, he was able to invent a jig that was able to provide ergonomic assistance with our employees to keep from getting carpal tunnel, and then also to streamline our processes. And granted, it kind of reduced my work staff, because instead of 2.58 people to pack on a line, I only need 1.25, but not to get technical about it. But then that allowed me to move those people to other jobs that paid higher.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandy.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to public comment then. Any public comment on this item?
Probably ought to do the public hearing.
Do we need to officially open a public
I
hearing?
move we conduct a public hearing.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All right, motion made by Vice Mayor Boley, seconded by Commissioner Herbert to open our official public hearing. Come on up. You'll be our first for a public
Aye.
hearing. Oh, we got a...
Aye.
I think I have senioritis, not just you. This is my last full meeting that I'll be running, so And I'm over caffeinated on top of that. All right, so motion made, seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now we have our public hearing open. Thank you for your patience, too.
Thank you. I'm Vicki Randall, 2408 Westdale Road. I'm a member of the Lawrence Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and I'm a chamber member. And through that position, I've had the opportunity to get to know Sandy and to learn about Plasticon. And it is, and she is, they are examples of the very kind of employer that I feel we really are fortunate to have in Lawrence. And I happily sense that you don't need much encouragement to support this request, but I encourage you to do so. And in a general sense, I also, as a chamber member, want to thank you for your support of the Catalyst program and your initiatives to support our businesses, such as Plasticon. They're such a great employer, and we need more of them like that in Lawrence, and I think this program will help. And again, I just wanted to put in a pitch for Sandy and the request, and thank you for your consideration and your patience with me and your support of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Any other public comment on this item? All right, so I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Mayor Soden, seconded by Commissioner Amix to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, any commission discussion on this item?
Again, this is a great project, and special thanks again to Sandy and everybody involved at Plasticon. I think it's a great opportunity again for our community, and it's a great expansion and a great use of our Catalyst program. So the idea of the lead and certification, and thank you, Commissioner, for bringing it up, because I was going to ask the same thing on how that certification happened, but it sounds like we've got everything covered. So thanks to staff and all the work that they've done.
Whenever you're ready for that Venture Park expansion, let us know.
Yeah.
That stuff's going pretty fast. You might want to hurry.
We're available.
Thank you for all your work, Sandy.
Okay, so looks like we're on to our motions. I don't know if we can do this as one motion. Do we need two motions? Okay. Well, I'm going to move that we adopt resolution number 7233 and adopt on first reading ordinance number 9430.
Second.
Motion made by Mayor Soden, second by Commissioner Herbert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Thank you for coming out. Very excited for your future.
Well, I hope to have you out for ribbon cutting and the hopefully groundbreaking here pretty soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so we're on to number 3. We're going to receive our final report for accounts receivable. I assume someone's going to come speak. Here comes Brian. Boy, I didn't do that. You've been teasing me this whole time.
It happens.
I'm going to taste my own.
Good evening, Brian Kidney, Finance Director. As you are more than likely aware that we've been doing some accounts receivable work in the Finance Department and all the way through all the city offices. If you recall last spring, we brought forward a rapid assessment that a firm named RSM came forward with to help us out with. During that rapid assessment, they located a lot of items that we needed to do some follow-up on, whether or not we're properly accounting for and receiving and billing and receiving money for certain contracts among the city. Through that rapid assessment, kind of determined that more work needed to be done to come in and make sure that we're following procedures and everything. That work has happened since the spring through the summer into the fall. We feel pretty confident that we've captured, for the most part, everything that that we know of that's been out there that's been billed or should be billed. We've gone through all the contracts that finance is aware of. We've done surveys. So we thought it'd be a good idea to bring forward a completeness type deal. So Christine Churchill's from RSM. She's the one that presented originally the original rapid assessment. And we just asked her to come forward and kind of talk through a little bit more of where we are now. In the packet, there's a little bit more comprehensive report and memo from finance, but she is obviously here for any questions after her presentation, so thanks.
Thank you for having us here tonight. What we wanted to do is give you a quick overview of what we did in the first phase. And essentially, we walked through the billing department, did a number of different interviews with the staff, as well as doing a data dump from your old billing system as well as your current system to just look for anomalies within the data, things where the trends perhaps did not match, just to see if we could find other things that could be missing from the information. In doing that, you know, the original root of this was the riverfront property, which started the project as a whole, and we found a number of things out of that assessment. We narrowed it down really to 5 primary items for review. Part of the issues had happened due to the data conversion from the old to new system and some of the turnover that had happened at that same time. There was a lack of communication across the various departments, so the billing department was not necessarily made aware of contracts that had been signed or bills that needed to be updated or changed in a timely manner. We had a lack of training. Some of the users were not up to date on the application as it was, and so we're unable to define some of the non-cycle billings and those type of things. We needed to put some additional controls in place, and the system that's being utilized does not have some of the more modern tools that you would typically see for controls and for audit purposes. With that, we came up with a number of recommendations that we shared with you last time, sort of this executive overview of it, and also developed a full project plan from that the city is in process of completing. With your approval, we moved into that second phase. On the second phase, we focused on 2 primary things as we discussed when I was here previously. For all of the trending data, the city's billing team went back and looked at each of those items individually amongst the systems to verify if those things that we found that were just data anomalies were truly incorrect billings. Through that, the primary causes are, as you can see, some of the naming variances or companies had taken over other properties. Some projects were canceled. Detail contract items were not updated as appropriate. And we had some rate changes based on annual increases that had not been recorded that caused some of the variances. And then just some normal customer turnover. So all in all, the data as a whole was pretty much okay. The survey, though, was the second piece of what we did. And this is where we found the majority of the information. So on June 26th, a survey went to 47 of the employees across the city. It would represent each of the various different departments or divisions that would typically do billing. The survey was intended to find, were there items that the billing department was not aware of at this point in time? Upon doing that, we had 102 contractual items that were discovered. Contractual items were properties, franchises, development, and economic contracts. We also had 31 non-contractual items. Those are essentially defined as things that did not have a fixed amount, where it was the same amount every month or changing on a period of time, things that were based on usage and required the departments to provide information back to billing to bill correctly. And then we had 51 items that were unrelated to miscellaneous billing. Some were completed and expired contracts, some were some like TIF agreements and those type of things that just did not necessarily apply to what we were looking for. With that data, we created a master listing of all of the contracts across the city. In that listing, we included the things that you would need for billing. So essentially a high-level extract of what the terms were, any milestones or criteria that would change what the billing amounts were, renewal periods. The billing team then took that information, compared it back to the bills that had been issued to that point to find any changes. When they did find deviations, they went back to the department that submitted that information, verified it, and made changes within the MAR billing system based upon that verification. Once that list was then updated, we sent it back out to all of the participants, requested that they review it and see if anything else came to light. The hope being that if something was forgotten, perhaps by seeing all of them together, they would acknowledge it and we would just need to add more to the listing. At this point, all the participants have reviewed and have commented back at least once on the master list, if not multiple times. With that, we created some follow-up items. So we had some billings that were done incorrectly, and we sent out explanatory letters to all of those impacted customers. The Douglas County billing was found after the survey. The information was not included with any of the responses that we received. We've completed all of the updates to the MAR records, and policies and procedures around miscellaneous billing have been completed at this point and are in final review process. In the end, our financial findings from this were $690,000 across 43 customers. Obviously, the land leases in Douglas County being the largest of those. 100% of these items have been billed, and all but $940 have been collected at this point in time. Property tax reimbursements is something that had come up earlier this month as the finance staff was reviewing the tax bills for the city-owned properties. They asked the city attorney's office to also review those, and in that they found that some property tax reimbursements have not been set up correctly. The city attorney's office is still in process of reviewing those, so we do not have a final number or finding on that activity. I wanted to bring back up sort of the recommendation summary. All of the items in red are things that the finance department has already put into place in addition to doing the review. So they're moving forward on those recommendations that we have made. And then finally, our ongoing concerns. We have a few things that still need to be addressed probably at a higher level. One of the main controls around this process is having a single point of contact where all agreements are going through, and that way billing knows they're always getting all of the documents. And that has not been established at this point. Also considering if the city attorney's office would have the ability and the time to review the contracts as they come in to create an extract for billing, to confirm that they are billed correctly based on the legal terms within the agreement. And then also we need someone to really represent the right-of-way contracts. They have a bit more complexity than some of the others. They're based on a number of different factors that have to be tracked. And to this point, we don't have someone to lead that particular initiative. From a technology perspective, there are a number of limitations within the MAR system that, with the procedures and policies that have been put in place, will help offset it, but it's not going to meet what you typically would see within an application. It does not have the ability to do workflows. It doesn't have any automation components within it, automated reconciliations, and so we're still doing a lot of paper movement back and forth and emails. It will limit our ability to some degree to track that the appropriate approvals are happening so that billing is done appropriately into the future. The reports that come out of the tool are difficult for users, and so for them to verify the data through a manual process is more complicated than perhaps it needs to be. I think our last point on this is really just, this is a continuous improvement activity. As people continue to work their way through the next year, they will find things that they did not mention during the survey, because, oh, this popped in my calendar, or this happened in X month, or whatever it may be, or even some of the vendors reaching out to say we didn't receive a bill for this. It's an ongoing process, and so it does require optimization, and that's where putting those procedures in place will help you into the future. This is really all we wanted to highlight, just to give you a view of the high-level information in addition to the memo and the full report that you've received. Do you have any questions of me?
Any questions for Christine?
This may be a question for Brian, but that $937 that remains missing, do we have confidence that that will be collected?
I wouldn't call it missing. It's been billed but not collected. So we're, I believe, still in some negotiations with that person. There's a discrepancy between what we say they owe and what they think we owe. So that's what that process is right now.
I mean, I realize it's mathematically insignificant to the large amount, but it is relatively important to me to be able to say to the public that we have collected 100% of this money. And so even though it's mathematically insignificant, it is of some importance, I think.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I know we have this issue with customers quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit, but we'll always have where we bill somebody and they say, we don't think that we owe that money. So in the course of, the volumes that we talk with, there will always be that, but it's specifically to these that we've identified. That's the one where we're at, so we'll chase that down as much as we can. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, it's possible that this issue is technically below the materiality threshold for the certified audit. Do you have any recommendations, in addition to what you've provided us with framing the next request for proposals for our financial audit?
I don't believe this was included in your prior financial audits, as you have mentioned. It probably should be, just.
Well, when you
while
say
it's-
what advice do you have for us on framing the request for proposal for the next certified audit?
I would put in there specifically that miscellaneous billing is included and requests that they look at inappropriate sampling. Typically 10% is what you will see.
So they would do some testing in that.
Exactly, right, yeah.
To do, otherwise referred to as spot auditing of those things as well.
Right, they're just reviewing that you are doing as your policy says, and then review some of the billing to make sure that it go out as expected.
Could you take it back to that slide of your recommendations, please? That one there. So it looks like we have been tackling some of them. Do we have any sort of time frame as to when we would get through that entire list, or do we need to get through the entire list, or can we get through it?
Some of the things you cannot get through based on the technology that you have in place.
Yeah, this is turning into our 2018 work plan to address everything that's not highlighted here. But as Christina made a comment, the strategic initiative part, the building system upgrade, that's something that we're going to request as part of our budget request to the city manager. I'm kind of going off the script here a little bit. I haven't really talked with them too much about that, but that, of course, is part of the strategic, what we're doing during the budget process. But I don't believe, at least in the quick wins area, that any of those should be a problem for us to get taken care of fairly quickly. So that is a work plan that the finance department does have. So.
And these will roll into specific individuals' performance criteria for their performance reviews as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's what I was going to ask about. Thank you for asking that. Any other questions for staff?
I do. Brian, as I stood in line paying my taxes yesterday at the courthouse, I couldn't help but think that there wouldn't, had we collected the amount of money, that would there have been an impact on the increase that we had in our mill levy? And can you comment on that?
I'd like to comment on that.
I would love to turn this over to our city manager. I will point out that, again, as he's preparing to answer this, that a lot of these would be considered as one-time revenues of things that we've looked at that you normally wouldn't do an ongoing program based on that revenue stream, but I'll just let Tom.
And I'll get to that, but I had a number of things I just kind of wanted to talk to all of you about in terms of what we learned in terms of this process. And so I tend to be a numbers person to begin with, but I started looking at this issue and thinking about it and whether we were an isolated case. And I thought to myself, well, there's probably 4 scenarios that I can come up with fairly quickly. There's those organizations that are perfect and don't have any accounts receivable issues. And they're so perfect, they don't need auditors, they don't need internal auditors, they don't need spot auditors. I guess you can all tell by my cynicism that there are probably a fairly small number of those out there. Then there are those organizations that don't know they have a problem. Okay? At some point, that was us. Then there's those organizations that identify that they have a problem, that they made errors, and then they go about a different process than we chose to. Finally, there's us, who probably didn't know they had a problem for quite a while. They identified the problem and became completely transparent about it, despite, you know, obviously being subjected to a lot of public criticism for this issue. My point in telling you all that is that we will encourage our staff to acknowledge that they have made mistakes and be transparent about that. And what I would encourage you and the public is that that is exactly what you want. You want to know that you have a problem, you want to be told about the problem, and you need to do that. We need to do that transparently. And so there's going to be public pushback and criticism about those in all of those cases. But organizationally, culturally, we need to have that kind of an environment that exists here. The other comments that I hear are, you know, we had staff that fell down in this process, and what's going to happen to those staff members? And as you know, personnel actions specifically do not get discussed publicly. There's all sorts of personnel law that comes into play, and there's issues in that regard. But I would tell you that in most cases that I'm aware of, most of these people are not with the city any longer, that had some participatory role in that, whether they recognized the problem or just didn't even know the problem existed. So there's been that kind of turnover. Quite frankly, some of the transition caused some of that issue as well, that like a relay race, the baton pass was not very well accomplished. And so that was part of the issue as well. And now I want to get to your issue. It seems to me that if in fact we had run that perfect organization, that you're absolutely right. Whether it would be fees or whether it would be property tax or some other revenue, we probably would not have had to raise fees or raise taxes to accommodate for revenues that otherwise would have been received if in fact the contracts were being administered from our end correctly and we were extracting or billing and collecting the correct fees from the beginning. So, as I thoroughly expected, as soon as this money was recovered, and by the way, the recovery process causes relationship issues in the community as well, with those that you go back and collect with. People have differences of opinion as to what the right amount was or wasn't, and we have to sit down and be very thorough and explain what the contract says, and then attempt to extract those funds back for the city. But we've had different suggestions on how we should use that money. Contextually, what I would like to suggest is that you not jump to any conclusions about how you use that money, but one serious consideration I would ask you to give is that you think about a return of the money by not increasing the rate going forward to that same extent. You can choose, I mean, that's your deliberation, how you intend to use the money. Quite frankly, if there are technology tools that should be deployed that haven't been to correct these issues and to monitor these issues, I would think some of the money should go towards that. So don't rush in and, you know, start proffering all sorts of suggestions on how to use the money at this point. And we have more yet to collect. But I said that not every organization, in my suspicion, is perfect about these things. Remember that there was an accounts receivable issue here. Maybe there was an accounts payable issue on the opposite side of that issue as well. And how wasn't that tracked and caught? I know when I owe somebody money, it bothers me until I've paid that money as well. I'm not trying to cast blame to any other side, but I would tell you public and private organizations do have these faux pas in their organization. Again, I'm trying to build the culture that says, we screwed up, we admit it, here's what we're doing to try and correct it. And that's what this special audit was about, despite other provisions that we had in place to monitor these things. We have changed our process from the time the commission meets to that it gets carried out by staff. Our documentation has been ramped up significantly from those. But there are arrangements that get made at a department level for smaller amounts that aren't necessarily built into the system as well as they should be. So we need to memorialize these things. The city attorney and her staff completed a complete review of the documents or the contracts that we had to make sure that there weren't any other provisions in there that we should be following up on. We have a myriad of contracts. And what's important to do is to ensconce a lot of that policy and procedure in writing so that when you have transitions in staff teams between city managers, finance directors, accountants, city attorneys, assistant managers, that there's a record of these things going forward. I can tell you that we have agreements that probably were made in the era of handshakes that probably weren't written as thoroughly or specifically as they should have been. And we need to go back and examine all of those and probably update those. And I've had that conversation with you before. We have agreements that were written in perpetuity. And quite frankly, perpetuity is a long time, and everything changes in perpetuity. And so those are things that we better learn from going forward when we enter into an agreement going forward. But to get back to your specific question, I think you want to give it some thought about, you know, these were funds that if had been collected, I don't think our rate would have been the same. I don't think maybe some fees would have been the same. And we should think about that as a context of the next budgeting process and cycle. And not rush to spend that on something that, quite frankly, is out of context in the budget cycle itself.
Right, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Tom, and I do appreciate, you know, you bringing up the transparency part, because I think, you know, I still remember the first night that you brought it up under city manager's report. I think it was that, you know, that a problem did exist, and, you know, the discussion that followed, you know, by the general public. And so, like I said yesterday, I was there, and I was in hopes that you were going to say that, in a nutshell, we think long and hard, and that, you know, I would recommend also, concur with city manager. Essentially, we return it back to the people that actually paid it, and you know, the increases that we had to do, and I think that's important. And you know, as you build the budget for next year, you know, it may be money that was collected and is available to spend, but this is one of those times where it ought to go back to the taxpayer that should have received the benefit of the money that was to be paid. Thanks for the answer.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, let's go to public comment, unless there's any other part to your presentation. Okay. Thank you. All right, so public comment, this isn't, just want to make sure. I've missed 2 public hearings now. I think we're safe for the rest of the agenda. We can just call for public comment. So come on up and sign in, and but you don't have to either if no one wants to speak.
Is this the general one, or because I came in?
No, the general happened already.
This is over that consent.
We're on number 3 of our regular agenda. We have agendas by the door if you'd like to check it out. We'll wait for you. Any other public comment from anyone?
I'm sorry I ended up coming late, and I wanted to follow this, but at this point in time, I lost something on the way over. Oh, that's right. So right now, this is not the public comment one, this is the.
We're on the regular agenda, number 3. We've already done general
Oh,
public
yeah,
comment.
okay, I ended up sleeping through the better part, sorry.
Thank you, Janine. Okay, well, it looks like Brian is ready to say something as a finale, perhaps. Is there any action? Doesn't look like it. Perhaps direct staff is appropriate. Was there any
The action is to
staff?
receive the report.
Just to receive.
And it-
Do we need to have a motion to receive the report? Yeah.
I would recommend it.
All right, I will move that we receive this report officially.
Second.
Motion made by Mayor Soden, seconded by Commissioner Larson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We've officially received the report. Was there any staff direction that we need to follow up with? Okay. You looked like you were going to say something, Mike. Okay.
I think by receiving the report, the recommendations in the report really require us to continue to implement those.
Oh, I guess Brian's lurking for number 4.
I'm lurking for the next item. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's take like just a 3-minute break real quick, please. Because I'm full of caffeine. Bring us back. Let's get this show on the road. Kurt, are you ready? All right. Is the commission ready? Okay. So now we are on to number 4. Consider approving recommendations to cease accepting utility bill payments made through grocery store drop boxes.
Thank you. This was an item that had come forward through the manager's memo earlier, and a discussion was talked about having a formal presentation, or at least a presentation. I thought I would invite Christy Webb. Christy is our utility billing manager, and she would definitely be able to answer your question a little bit more specifically than I might. So I'll just pass along and let her give a short presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I just was going to give a real quick high-level overview of what's in that agenda item, just to kind of hit on really the key points of what we were trying to make with that. The utility bill payments are made at grocery store drop boxes, are currently being picked up twice each week. We have a staff member who uses their personal vehicle to pick those up. So that represents about 104 staff hours each year and a little over 1,500 miles driven each year to pick those up. There are approximately 600 customers that are currently paying through the grocery store drop boxes, which represents about 2% of our customers. Since the drop boxes are only picked up twice weekly, customers do need to allow additional processing time. And that's really our biggest concern, is that we don't feel like we're providing the level of customer service that we would like with that method of payment. And it also gives our customers a false sense of security. So due to the additional processing time, that can be additional fees for the customers. They can get late fees applied, because those do get applied based on when we process the payment, not when, the customer tells us they made that payment. And there's really, unfortunately, no way for us to verify when that payment is dropped in that drop box. So the only date we can go off of is the date that we're receiving it and processing it. And honestly, we do have customers who have their water service disconnected because they make a payment in the drop box, but before we actually pick it up and process it, we've already generated a shut-off service order. And that can happen up to 1 to 2 times a month, which, I always hate to see that, because that results in additional $50 in fees for that customer, for us to roll a truck to shut them off, to roll a truck to turn their water back on. And it can also delay how quickly we can get their water turned back on, because we can't turn their water back on unless we have that payment in our hands. So unfortunately, that can delay that service interruption for that customer. I did want to point out on the agenda item, I did neglect to include the option that payments can be made through an automated phone system using an e-check or a credit card. And that is free of charge as well. So that is an additional method that we do accept payment. So that's really the summary I have, and I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for staff?
Do you know if there's a mail drop box at each of the grocery stores that accepts those payments?
Yes, I do know that there is a mail drop box. Yes.
I do that one.
Please.
I think I paid all of my bills yesterday and my taxes. I can pay my gas bill, I can pay my electric bills at the grocery store, okay? And they do some electronic thing that they take the money, I assume, from my account, give my check back, on and on and on. Can we not do that?
So the problem with that currently is that our billing system isn't sophisticated enough to have that real-time integration with those type of payment methods. So we could do that. It would still see the same type of delays, because we're not going to know in real time, oh, you made a payment, we better cancel that shut-off. Or we better post it so we don't have late fees apply. So there's still going to be a 2 to 3 day delay with those, because we just can't handle those kind of integrations. Now, we are in the process of replacing our billing system, so we would hope in the next 18 months we could look at some of those options, and that we'd have, we will definitely have a better billing system that can handle those real-time integrations.
Okay.
Can you run me through, under this staff proposal here, if this were to go through, can you run me through all of the options that we would have that are cost-free to pay a city water bill?
So obviously they can pay through the mail. They can pay at the counter. So at the counter, we can accept cash, checks, money orders, credit cards. They can pay online with an e-check or a credit card, debit card. When I say credit card, we also accept debit cards any place we accept credit cards. You can pay through the automated phone system, again with e-checks or credit or debit cards. Let me make sure I haven't forgotten any. Oh, we have a drop box outside City Hall, and that is a secure drop box. It's picked up every day, so that's pretty, very quick processing on those.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, well, we'll go to public comment. All right, come on up and say what you will. Sign in, say your name for the camera, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Hayden Maples, and I live in the Deerfield area. First, I want to thank you for your willingness to have full discussions on the city manager's report items based on community feedback. I know that's happened a couple of times recently, and I think it's great. I think it was 2 weeks ago that Mr. Marcus clarified comments can be provided on those city manager report items, which is good to know. And then, as was discussed earlier, it sounds like public comment would be an option for that as well. I think flexibility on those comment times is good. I was wondering if similar text to the other agenda areas could be added to make more clear that comments are accepted on those city manager report items, or maybe just a blanket statement about public comment at the top of the agenda. On the boxes themselves, I appreciate the effort to save time and costs while also improving the security of payments. I am curious, however, if there is any data about the 2% of customers that are using this service. I've heard some concerns that this could impact pretty negatively and have a disproportionate impact on our lower income population, so I want to make sure that is considered. And if that is the case, there's some data behind that 2% that this is a critical need. Would there be a way to balance some of the costs of adding security to the highest volume locations by cutting maybe a couple of the lowest volume locations, or by combining with some other cuts, add the Dillon's on Mass Street to better balance access geographically? They're kind of consolidated in different parts of the city. And then again, if this is determined to be a vital service, could costs be reduced in other ways? Some ideas I had include utilizing a lower wage employee, using a city-owned vehicle, collection by employees on the way to work, which would reduce the miles reimbursed, or collect if there's an overlap when other city activities are taking place in those areas. A couple other thoughts I had while we were sitting here. I know there was a KU project to do a solar-powered library drop box, and then that way videos can be returned and stay warm. So I wondered if there's a way to maybe do a KU project where they have some remote sensing, so it acknowledges when payment has been submitted, and that way you don't have empty runs to those locations, but you can also potentially have employees pick those up more frequently if there is payments in place. And then I also, the automated meters, talked about shutoffs and turn-ons. I know at one point there was discussion about moving to automated meters, and I don't know if that allows capability for remote shutoff and turn-on. So that's all I had. Thank you, and happy holidays, by the way.
Thank you, Hayden. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Marcy Francisco, 1101 Ohio. I've had a couple of people comment to me about this issue and concerns about who it might affect in our community. So haven't done a lot of thinking or research, but I did want to ask if you as members of the commission might look at an alternative about allowing utility payments for the city to be made at our Parks and Recreation offices. If there's a specific time that those are open, 8 to 5, I know that you wouldn't want to necessarily extend it to weekends or evenings, but we have people there who are accepting payments. I am not familiar with how often they turn in paperwork to the city, but I think that's at least an opportunity we should ask about as an alternative to eliminating the opportunity to just drop it off in places around Lawrence. I appreciate the drop box right in front of City Hall, but I live close to downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcy, for the suggestion. Any other public comment?
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, staff. I'm Lynn Henderson. I live in Brick Creek neighborhood, which I think we all know is in the middle of a food desert. So I appreciate the opportunity to have a public discussion on this, since I was the one who actually asked for it to be moved to a regular agenda item. And hopefully you all have my attachment in your packet material, but I just want to go over a few points. So the people I'm worried about are those that don't have a car or don't have a checking account and who live on the edge financially and pay their bills at the last minute. And I think it would be great if we could get some data on who exactly the 600 people are. Are they roughly the same people who use this every month? Are they paying by money order? Are they paying by check? Are they paying by cash? And that would give us a lot of information right there, who uses the service. Sometimes the cost of a 49-cent stamp could mean the difference between maybe baby food or ramen noodles or something else. There really are people who that extra $6 a year in stamps could be used for something else. Those people are invisible to a lot of people, and I just want to make sure we're not overlooking them by just going ahead and changing this without any real concrete information. You know, I love data. Suggesting that, well, if they don't have an internet connection, they can go to the library, or, you know, they can come down here and pay it. Well, if they don't have a car, it's another bus trip down here, or it's another trip to get to the library to pay it online. We have to think kind of outside the box that so many of us live in. So those really are my concerns. And
Oh, 3 minutes, gotta wrap it up, Melinda.
so those are my concerns, and I hope that you can address them and not make any final decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Any other public comment on this item?
I'm Janine Carding. I really wanted to make comment on something else, but I want to just confirm what she's stating, that a lot of times when you make decisions, and I did see this one because I read the agenda ahead, that, you know, we're going to hear about the savings you're all making when you do this. I do think that I will also like to reaffirm that a lot of the people are living in a certain box where they have an automobile, they have access to enough money that they're not on the edge for their bills, and then we're always bottom lining what we're saving. I think I'll be able to make it down to this drop box downtown or the city hall to pay it, but I think often we're forgetting that there are really poor people that, you know, it is serious, you know. So I just want to reconfirm what she said and add in, and that's true in a lot of the other areas of how we operate here, that we're forgetting those fringe people, and we think everything's easy when it's not.
Thank you, Janine. Any other public comment? Okay, so we'll bring it back to the commission.
A question for utilities.
Come on up.
Ms. Webb or Ms. Kidney, whoever.
I'll see if I can.
What is you said that when water is shut off, there's a $50 charge to get it turned back on.
Correct.
What is the late fee if a payment is received late before water is shut off?
It's a 2% fee, so it's just a
2%?
flat 2% on whatever that bill was.
So I know there is no
It-
standard water bill, but
Let's just say like on a typical
$100.
$70 bill, that's pretty common. I can't do the math that quick, sorry. But, typical late fees we're looking at are like $1.34 for water, 37 cents on trash, so, it's less than $2.
okay. Yeah, if $70, you say is a pretty typical bill.
Yeah.
So about $1.40 then, on the late fee. Okay. And do you have any data on you said you only collect twice a week from these drop boxes?
Correct.
Do you know approximately how many of those 600 payments you receive are showing up late?
No, not offhand. No, I honestly
Okay.
don't. I just have to be guessing at that point.
Sure.
I mean, I know that, it's only 1 to 2 a month that actually get shut off. So to get shut off, you'd have to be 2 months late at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I'm just trying to do the math and figure out here. Melinda talked about the individuals in the community that could be deeply affected by a 49-cent stamp fee, but I'm also trying to weigh that against how many people are being hit with a $1.40 late fee because we only collect twice a week.
Right.
If they're affected by 49 cents, they're certainly going to be affected by $1.40.
Right.
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
Can you, do you have any data on how many people come and pay their bill in person at this building versus mail it or pay it online or whatever it may be?
We see about 20 to 30 per day customers who are paying their bill. But, they could be paying with cash, they could be paying with checks or credit cards. So in terms of the cash customers, were you asking specifically just about cash customers or
No.
just any foot traffic we
How
get?
how many people
Yeah.
come to the window?
About 20 to 30 a day.
Do you see quite a bit of cash payments made in the grocery drop boxes?
Very infrequently. I think most people know that that's definitely not a good way to make payments. I mean, now and then, but it's pretty infrequent.
So for whatever reason, we got 600 people a month that do not access this building, but they want to make good on their bill.
Correct.
Should be a way to help somehow. I mean, we've got buildings everywhere in this community that we own. And I don't know why people can't come to this building, and there are probably all kinds of reasons. But it just seemed to me that there should be some other location that they could physically drop the bill off, as long as they're not putting cash in a box.
Mhm.
I mean, the senator had a good idea. We got a Parks building, if nothing else, so, I don't know.
I appreciate that, but, we've heard that there's a mailbox in each one of these grocery stores. And, we've asked staff to be financially and environmentally sustainable. And I think they're trying to do what we asked them to do. If somebody can't afford a 49-cent stamp or whatever it takes, I mean, I do mine online. Maybe what we ought to be talking about is whether they ought to be on a reduced utility plan for elderly and people in poverty. I mean, if that stamp makes that much difference, maybe there's something else we ought to be doing, not having a grocery box.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that 49-cent stamp, we have a multitude of free options. If you
that's
don't
true.
have online, we offer a phone option, which has no charge. And as I understand it, the online payment as well as the phone processing, the city's actually eating that credit card cost, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
So, that's already a way in which we kind of subsidize that to make sure that And, you know, my understanding was when the city began subsidizing that by eating that cost, I think it used to be $3 when I would pay online or something
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
$3.25.
$3.25. The point was to try to move people to a more secure payment model, you know, that leaving cash in an unsecured drop box is that's not just bad for the city from an environmental standpoint or sustainable standpoint. I mean, it's just a bad idea. And trying to encourage, you know, and Melinda made the comment, you know, being from Brook Creek, she made the comment that I thought was interesting. She said, you know, we're in a food desert, which, you know, I think a lot of our city's individuals who need the most financial help find themselves in this food desert, which by definition means they don't have access to a grocery store easily, which means that by definition they're not actually being thoroughly convenienced by this convenience. You know, maintaining the city lockbox, which is secured, maintaining free phone payment, maintaining free online payment. And, you know, the other issue in helping people financially is realizing that if we're only collecting these payments twice a week, we're hitting people with a $1.40 late fee, you know, who had paid on time. And so I guess really you're in a situation with, if you're going to maintain these grocery store payment boxes, it ought to be maintained at a rate that enables people to actually have their payment be collected the day it's dropped. So it's not, to me, a matter of status quo. It's we either go with the more efficient model that staff has identified, or we actually look at more expensive models than what we're currently doing. I don't think there's a status quo option here.
I got a question for staff. Are the due dates for utility bills the same?
Yeah, so it's, well, in terms of, it's 21 days after the bill's generated, that's always consistent. For the most part, the cycles are generated the same day, and the due dates are the same, but if the typical due date or the typical generation date falls on a weekend, it's going to push that generation date up a few days or forward a few days, so it can push that due date forward a few days.
But so they're spread throughout the month for everybody?
Exactly. So
Okay.
we bill by cycle, and there's 4 cycles in a month.
Okay.
And I did want to mention, when we did start offering the absorbed costs for the online and the payments made through the phone, that we saw a really large reduction in the number of people paying at the counter, the amount of payments made through the mail, the amount of payments made through the Dropbox. So this, you know, 600 customers a month, that represents a much smaller number than it used to be when there were fees to make those credit card payments.
You know, it seems if we tried to use another city building anywhere in town, you'd still run into the same issue of having to get it somehow down
In
here
fact,
to City
it'd be
Hall.
more expensive because now you'd have to go to every Parks building or, you know.
Right. I mean, you know, our hope with a better billing system is, you know, maybe we could have some remote locations where there would be that real-time payment posting in remote locations. So that is our long-term goal, is definitely to make some more accessible payment options in the community as we get to that technology that we can do that. But right now, unfortunately, it doesn't support that.
What do y'all want to do? Melinda, are you saying that you want to come up and do public comment again? I'm going to guess by your gestures.
I just wanted to know if I could briefly explain my food desert comment, because it had to do with the geography of where these grocery stores were, and the closest one to me is Dillon's on Mass, until someday we may get one downtown. So I wouldn't be going to any of these other ones that are, everything is very far away from one of the lowest income census tracts. So that was my
The
comment.
Dillon's on Mass doesn't collect city utility payments though, right?
No, exactly. So just the whole idea of maybe restructuring, I think what Hayden was saying. But thank you, I appreciate it.
We can,
You're welcome to overrule me, but I would move that we'd approve recommendation to cease accepting utility bill payments made through grocery store drop boxes effective February 16th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Are you ready to go to the vote? Motion made by Commissioner Herbert, seconded by Vice Mayor Boley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
nay.
Motion passes 4-1 with Amix against. Thank you for coming out. All right, so we're on to number 5. Consider approving the 2018 City of Lawrence Legislative Priority Statement. One thing that I wanted to mention is when you come up and show your giant list, is that the chamber has their annual meeting.
Giant list.
I looked at it, it's a giant list. Just listen to where I'm going, listen to where I'm going. So I'm expected to give a 5-minute speech on our legislative priorities. Clearly, I will not be able to do the entire list in that time. So if you all could come up with your kind of top priorities you want me to bring up at the speech, I would appreciate it. Of course, after we pass the legislative priorities.
Good evening, Mayor Commissioners. This is an item that you look at every year, and the draft that's in front of you this evening is very similar to the one that you have seen before. I don't know that we've made any major changes to this document, but this sets out the city's state legislative agenda and our request to those that represent us to consider in Topeka as they're looking at issues that might affect the city of Lawrence. There is a letter that's included in your packet from Kay Johnson with Persoco, and Kay happens to be here this evening. She and I were just visiting a little bit before the break. In the letter, she was requesting a number of items for consideration of the city. There were a few things that I did want to point out. She and I talked about that actually from a city standpoint we're already doing. Her letter had to do with interest in energy efficiency issues. And we were talking about how our current code as written speaks to a number of the energy efficiency issues, and then with the 2018 building code discussion that's on the highlight coming up here this next year, that's something that we have indicated to Persoco that they should be involved with, and they're aware of when those discussions are going to be having. I would say that if you all wanted to consider something that's responsive to the letter that was included there, you might want to just include some kind of a general statement about the city's support of energy efficiency, and encouraging the state to be cognizant of those sorts of issues. We would be happy to draft something like that if you so desire.
I'd be happy to add something like that.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have this evening.
Any questions about our legislative priorities for staff?
Diane, on the home rule and local control part of our statement, as it talks about things like the conceal and carry laws and tax lid and stuff, is there a way to frame this that would give communities the opportunity to decide on these, rather than having, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but where we could decide, say, a different way to go on some of these items as compared to Garden City, way out west? Is that our intent here, is to give the local control by the individual cities, or that each city would decide the fate of these type of issues on their own?
Well, I think generally, in Kansas, we have had really, really strong support of local control and being able to kind of go with our own destiny and where we want to go as a community. But there's been a number of cases, as you know, that that power has been thwarted. We are specifically prohibited to have any different local legislation. I think that's what this general statement is trying to reinforce. But if you all would like us to relook at the language, or you have any suggested language, we could certainly.
No, I
certainly
think,
try
I
and
think as
address
we
that.
go up and we make comments in the various committees and various things, you know, that I think that this is one of the biggest parts of our entire statement. So, I mean, as I see home rule, you know, walking away from us, and something that we've all fought pretty hard for over the years, I just think it's absolutely wrong, and something that, you know, that's going on in Topeka, and something that we really need to hammer home.
And Commissioner, I know that the League of Kansas Municipalities, which of course we're a member of, makes very strong statements along those exact lines as well. So we are all trying to draw attention to that important issue.
I have a question, Diane. We send this up every year. Do we get movement on any of this stuff?
Well, I think from time to time, there is movement. I know that our local delegation has been very supportive of a number of these items. I think, and certainly then this is the platform on which our staff feels comfortable going to provide testimony, and in some appropriate cases where those kinds of things might come up during the legislative session. So I think it just kind of depends on the particular issue and maybe the particular session, Commissioner.
Can you think of anything in recent years that we've been able to change based on what we've discussed in
I know
here?
that we have provided some testimony.
I can give you an example of that. About 2 years ago, Casey and I drove up to Topeka to speak on behalf of local control of affordable housing initiatives. And we sat through a meeting for about 90 minutes before they decided not to let us offer any testimony, and then we left. It was an exciting 90 minutes getting to sit next to Casey. I enjoyed our time together. I do not think that it benefited us in any way as a city, though.
Gave you a good story.
It
I
did
remember
make
that.
for a great story.
I remember when you did that, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess that's it for staff questions. Public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
All right.
Good evening, Commissioners. Marcy Francisco, 1101 Ohio, and a member of the legislature. I just want to say thank you, because I do appreciate the work that the commission and the staff put into this. It's helpful to me to be reminded of the priorities, and I'm pleased that a number of the new colleagues that I have in the Senate who came in last year have had experience in another level of government, either as a school superintendent or on the county commission or on the city commission. And I think with that experience, we may have some individuals who understand that what we need to be doing in government is working together. So please continue to ask us what we can do for you and how we can best work together. That is very important. And if it's very good to have a list that we're working from, so we feel we can call staff, or perhaps even say if we know that something's coming up at a committee. I know that it's frustrating because I also sat through a meeting for about an hour and a half and didn't get a chance to talk. So it happens to us as well, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Marcy. Senator, I should call you your title.
Sure, yeah, can I get that on? I wasn't really planning on commenting on this because I had the same question, skepticism on how well this was regarded or if it was really listened to, but I appreciate Senator Francisco's comments. Obviously, after the Lawrence Sunset Alliance, I was pretty passionate about the sales tax side of things. And this chart, maybe, has Kansas as our state Our state tax level, sorry, I used the microphone. State tax level at 6.5% currently is the 9th highest in the country, and a significant increase in sales tax, which was opposed in general, but even just going up to 7% would put us, I think, tied for 5th, and then a whole percent would put us in first place above California at 7.25%. So I wholeheartedly agree that we should not increase sales taxes and would push to reduce them if you believe that. Thanks.
Thank you, Hayden.
Okay, I have to go back to. Yeah, okay, here. Thank you. Oh, where's SPCL map? I do. Do I have what? Okay. Hi, me again. And it's about sales taxes. So what Hayden was talking about was since 2008, we've had a 1.2% increase in the state sales tax. And that's the main reason I was upset about continuing sales taxes for another 10 years, because we didn't know what else was going to happen. And yesterday, I got Hover's capital report summarizing talks on school finance so far. And what jumped out at me was some of the options are another penny of sales tax, moving us up to 7.5%, as he said, top in the nation. And that might get them $450 million, or ratcheting the school property tax back up. I think it used to be 35 mils, from 20 to 37 mils. Just say no to all of this. Or if they have to, I know you have, under your sales tax fairness, it talks about, sales tax can be a burden, etc. But remember, we pay sales tax on food. And the only comment here is increases in the state sales tax should be avoided. I just wonder if we could state that a little more strongly. I took this from the 2016 legislative priority statement after they had raised the sales taxes up to 6.5. And I wonder if we could just use this as a template. There was a lot of discussion last year in the legislature during the session when they were working on their budget on, can we at least reduce some of the sales taxes on food? We know it's going to take forever to at least get the sales taxes decreased. But if they want to start talking about increasing the sales taxes, we have got to keep hitting them with this time and time again. When you ask, do we ever get what we want? Well, I think we're getting closer. At least they're having conversations about it now. And I have hopes that they will at least have the discussion, removing it from food. So this, I can get you all copies, but I would like to see a much stronger statement than what we have.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Jennifer Ananda, 4th in Indiana.
Commissioner-elect.
Commissioner.
Waiting for you to say your cool title.
All right. I'll let you say it for me. Thank you. I just wanted to point out the same thing that Melinda was talking about, actually, which is, we are aware that the state is experiencing fiscal hardship. So the likelihood of them talking about food purchase exemption from sales tax is unlikely. But I also think that we all know what we heard when we were talking about the sales tax pieces is that people are much less likely to feel the brunt of sales tax increases if it's not on the necessities for life, for example, food and or school supplies, baby supplies, women's supplies, etc., in a way that is going to reduce that burden on individuals who spend the majority of the money that they make. So I would also ask that the consideration be made that support for eliminating sales tax on at least food sales is supported by our community.
Thank you, Commissioner-elect.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Kay Johnson. I'm the Sustainability and Environment Manager for Proseco, and I'm also representing BuildSmart. We're located in the East Hills Business Park. I do appreciate your willingness to look at energy efficiency as a legislative priority. We feel particularly strong about that as a business opportunity as well for the state as well as for our own activities that we've got going on. And I also do tell you from my own experience, these legislative priorities to you are important to us. When you set these legislative priorities, then that helps us lay the groundwork when we go to work in the state. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you for advocating for Lawrence, too.
Good
I
evening
didn't know
again,
that.
Michael Allman here. I'm grateful so many people are speaking about eliminating sales tax on food. I think it's high time that Kansas would do that, and I would appreciate if the commission would include a very strong statement in that regard in your request. Also, I want to support the Proseco initiative on energy efficiency in housing, particularly multifamily. If anything will affect affordability of housing, it's energy expenditures. Could be anywhere from 25 to 50% of people's income goes to energy in their home. So I want to support that. Also, I have mentioned periodically over the past year or two, two items that I see affecting pedestrian and bicycle facilities and transportation ability in Lawrence. One is the default Kansas municipal speed limit of 30 miles an hour. We can't change that speed limit unless we jump through a lot of hoops, do traffic assessment block by block, street by street, to justify changing it to 20 miles an hour. That should be a default at the state level, and then a municipality can raise it on given streets to 30 or whatever they choose. So I would like to see that reversed. A major safety concern for pedestrians and bicyclists. It would make a whole lot more of the, quote, bicycle network, which in a lot of regards are just common streets, make them really safe and usable by bicyclists. The second thing has to do with sidewalk maintenance. As you know, that's been a funding issue, and the Pedestrian Bicycle Task Force explored a lot of different options on raising a fee, that Lawrence could raise a fee. We need to figure out other ways. I'm sure the city manager is keen on this, of finding new revenue sources. So as I understand, there's some Kansas statute impediments for us. I don't know if it's a home rule thing, but it has to do with that if it's a franchise fee, if it's a tax, if it's like similar to the stormwater fee, you have a concrete fee, a street safety fee, something in that nature that a locality should be able to use to raise revenue, just like we do a stormwater fee. But for some reason, it's problematic at the state level. I can't understand why, but I would like to see you look into that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Any other public comment on legislative priorities? Okay, so we'll bring it back to the commission. As already said, I'm interested in the energy efficiency one. Got to go back to that. Are there any that y'all are interested in adding?
You know, the sales tax on food, I think, is something that, you know, it's something we've talked about over the last several years. I mean, one of the things that we really need to be careful of is our budget being based on sales tax and you know, the effect that it would have on our budget with the elimination of sales tax. I think one of the things that we ought to discuss maybe as a commission is any new increases in sales tax, that increase should not be on food. You know, you still have what we have now as being the basis, but, you know, any increase in that amount, there would be an exemption on that food, on food sales.
I think we just looked at the pie chart, and I think food accounts for 13%.
13%?
Yeah.
Of our revenue?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
For sales tax.
It was like 5 million a couple of years ago when we talked about this, I believe.
Yeah, it's a big
somewhere
number.
there.
The other thing I was going to mention to you, one of my previous states, I think Michigan, they used to have an annual day, maybe more, for amnesty for school supplies, and they always did it, you know, before school started again. And
I've been wanting to do that for years.
yeah, so you might want to mention that. I'm not
If we
sure
had
that the
home rule,
impact
that
would
might
be
be a
as severe,
possibility.
but it certainly would help families with kids going back to school, so.
And we keep hopefully dollars here instead of going to Kansas City. There was a reason, though, I can't remember what it was, that the commission or staff did not look at it. Do you remember what it was?
I don't think we have the authority.
We just don't have the authority.
I don't think we had the authority to be able to do it.
No, you
So-
don't locally.
No.
It'd probably be and it was across the state.
Oh, it has to be a
Right.
state initiative.
Right.
Hmm.
Well,
Especially
like-
the state sales tax portion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can for local city tax, sales tax, no? Gosh. You guys just aren't helping me at all.
Home rule, remember those two words.
You know, as I've read through these, it seems like home rule kind of runs through quite a few of these issues, essentially.
It does.
But I am interested in the letter that was written by our folks out at Prosoco out there, Kay. Scott, I thought we were on the 2015 codes, are we, or are we on the 2012?
2015.
Okay.
Looking at 2018 right now.
So we do have those in Lawrence, okay, because that was one of your recommendations. And I know all of our affordable housing that's built by tenants to homeowners, or I should say Habitat, they all build to energy efficient standards, Energy Star standards, so that helps.
One of the things you might want to consider is adding some sort of language with the new sales tax initiative where that money is being leveraged, that there's a better level of leverage to ask for energy efficiency improvements in any buildings or projects that we fund. We might want to build that into it.
Are you talking about our IRB policy? 'Cause I thought that was already
Well,
in
I
there.
think the trust fund, housing trust fund policy
Oh,
is going
specifically for
yeah.
affordable housing.
Well, that's where I assume the estimated $1 million from the new sales tax will go towards, so we could impose that kind of condition.
For any built assets, not, I mean, if we had vouchers that for rental homes, then that would be different.
But anything that we're doing to incentivize new housing through that trust fund,
Yes.
I think that's a pretty valid point, that if you can cut energy costs,
It's huge.
you can get people further along, not just ownership, but in rental streams too, in terms of cost control.
So are we all wanting to add that? I hear two people.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes, I would like to add
Okay.
that, yeah.
Any other things that we want to add?
Tom, any comment on Michael's suggestion about new monies maybe for sidewalk maintenance?
Well, I think we're going to have that discussion after the first of the year in terms,
Ninth?
after your departure,
Just checking.
Commissioner. So we're,
You can come back and do
we're
public comment.
expecting you to come and get your 3 minutes.
Yeah,
I don't have
you'll
a
have 3
sidewalk.
minutes, Mike.
Not yet, you don't.
Not yet. Okay. So the idea of the sales tax, any increase from the state should not be placed on food? And I don't know the language that you need on that.
I kind of worry if retailers actually have that ability to necessarily kind of, I know grocery stores are able to parse out where they charge, but I mean, if you go, you know, down here to downtown Lawrence, I'm not sure a lot of retailers down there can actually have electronics to just make that determination for them, that it might have to be a manual interpretation they'd have to do.
Other states have figured it out.
That's
I mean,
right, yeah.
we wouldn't be inventing
You wouldn't
something
be
new.
the start.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm just
Yeah,
trying
there's
to make this
technology
work.
out there.
yeah, it's,
Well,
So
there's
is the-
technology out there to collect sales tax for what they refer to as a foreign purchase outside of your state too,
Yeah.
which quite frankly is not being,
So is this something the
Deployed.
commission is wanting to add then,
For the sales tax?
the incremental addition does not go towards sales tax, if I'm
On
understanding
food.
correctly?
Yeah, all I'm saying is Melinda and others have suggested that, you know, the state on the school finance stuff may add a cent. Well, that cent can't be applied to food. That's all I suggest. I mean, I don't want to create a public nightmare, and a financial nightmare of removing sales tax on food because the effect it would have on existing budget. But I think any new increase should not be.
I'm a little concerned that we may be perceived as advocating for an increase in sales tax, and that's not where I want to
No.
go.
Okay.
you mean to replace the lost.
Well, I mean, if they're talking about raising sales tax, the state sales tax from 6.5 to 7.5.
Oh, I see.
I don't want to have any part of telling them what to do or how to do that. Seriously. I don't want to be seen as supporting that at all.
So you want to make a statement that we don't support that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
do
I would
that.
make a
Okay.
statement,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we
Well,
have
that's
it in
fine.
here. Are you saying that you
Yeah.
want to make a stronger statement?
Sales tax
That isn't here.
it's, I thought it was in there, wasn't it?
That's under
Yeah.
sales tax fairness,
Fairness.
the
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
line says
It's there,
increases in
yeah.
the state sales tax should be avoided. Would you like to make a stronger statement than that?
I reject it.
The city of Lawrence does not support raising the state sales tax rate.
That'll
Period.
take care of it.
Yeah.
How about that?
Is that good enough staff direction for you? Am I pointing this at Diane? Diane's doing a lot of writing. Okay. Anything else that you would like to add? Or shall we
Vice
talk
Mayor,
about current ones?
Thank you.
What did you say?
I said thank you.
All right, so I'm going to have this speech. I'll 5 minutes at this speech. What legislative priorities would you like for me to emphasize in that 5 minutes?
Home rule.
Home rule.
I'd start and finish with that.
Yeah.
Maybe in the middle
It's threaded
too.
throughout the entire document, if you read it. It's all there.
So do you want me to perhaps talk about home rule for 5 minutes and the sub-items that are underneath that? Anything else you want me to talk about?
I think definitely, incorporate the sales tax issue because that has been already brought out that they're possibly looking at that.
Increasing
I
it.
think the gun stuff too. I mean,
Okay.
that's a change that's very topical right now,
Mhm.
January 1.
I mean, I don't have to give the speech, but if I did have to give it, I would really focus on some transportation issues too, specifically, making sure that KDOT is actually funded. I mean, I think of some issues we've had in Lawrence here with, I forget I call it Castle, but whatever county road it becomes. You know, they were in the midst of trying to do something but had no funding for it, and it just became, and it still remains, kind of a never-ending game. Making sure the state's putting priority on their infrastructure projects.
What about Castle?
Remember when we had the debate about whether or not to close Castle?
curve?
Yeah, we're crossing over.
What does the state funding have to do with
Well, because
closing that?
they told us the reason they wanted it closed was they had a project that they were going to do right there. And we said, well, do you have to close it right now? And they said, yes, even though we don't have any funding for the project. And
I get-
so,
I
you
get
know,
where you're
the
going
idea
now.
of that
Yeah,
they're literally working on projects they don't have any funding for.
Got it. Thank you for the example. If I'm going to speak on your behalf, I need to understand what you're saying.
Hey, no, I get it.
And then I go back to home rule.
And then so,
And then open and close with home rule.
You know, one of the things our legislators may have some opportunities in the area of home rule, and we just want them to know that whatever opportunities they have to bring some of that back to us, we appreciate. Does that make sense?
I think so.
it's almost like you're going to a group elected on the notion of limited government and telling them they should believe in limited government. Only maybe say it less sarcastically than I would have.
Shall I close with that? That could be my final line. All right, so excellent. Thank you for the help in kind of better prioritizing, because I've been to some of those previously, and a lot of the speakers seem to say the same thing. So I don't want to. I want ours to kind of stand out on what we'd like to prioritize. So I appreciate this. Thank you. Is there any action that we need to take on this? I assume that we need to approve.
As amended.
As amended.
Second. Third.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Pulley. I think it was seconded by Commissioner Amix. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. You know, I read those legislative priorities. It makes me feel good to live in Lawrence. I like to read through those. I think they're good ones. All right, so now we're on to commission items.
I just had a quick question on, I was looking through the current vacancies on boards and commissions. And on the mental health board, we had Ken McGovern's spot showing as expiring last April.
Well,
Is he maintaining that position, or?
well, here's what's going on. So that is a joint city and county
Right.
appointee. And so the county put it in, and I said, hey, if you want to have the sheriff every year, just make him an actual member of the board that says sheriff or otherwise directed sheriff's representative. And I don't know if anything has ever come out of that. So I'm happy for him to be in that position, but if you want to always have the sheriff, then that should just be a specific.
Well, I'm just wondering, because a lot of members of our community look at the current vacancies, and, you know, they apply for positions, and we've advertised this one since April.
Well, I've been talking to staff about
But
this. I
it
guess
doesn't
the
actually
question
appear
is,
like it's an opening.
Where
That's where I'm going
are
with
we
that.
at on that? Are we going to work with the county or not to change? Don't all speak at once. Okay, thank you.
I'm not aware of the details, but.
That's something since April. I've been trying to
Right.
just fix the ordinance so it says that. Whether that means we have a new appointee or not, I guess that will probably fall into your vote by that time, but it doesn't really make any difference to me. Any other commission items? I have a commission item. Whenever we have, as outgoing, right, and having to do this for a year, whenever we have on the agenda, in our regular agenda, where we have receive report, and sometimes we formally accept it, sometimes we do not formally accept it. As chair of the meeting, it's just, how about we just always have it on there that we formally receive the report as an action item? Is that acceptable?
As long
for
as
the
we can
commission?
choose to defer them, that's okay.
That we can always do that, but it's just, as chair of the meeting, sometimes it helps with the flow to understand, hey, here's where we need a motion, here's where we're not. And it seems a little arbitrary when we do it week to week, whether we do or not. So, just Just trying to make it easier for future chairs of the meeting.
Thank you for your consideration.
Action required.
No action. It's a commission item, can't do action.
No, I mean, action required from this point forward, right?
Yes. Thank you. Any other commission items? So we're on to city manager's report.
The fabled city manager's report. I'm going to take a point of preference and jump to the City of Lawrence Energy Efficiency and Facility Improvement Project. We're not only graced by the presence of Senator Francisco, we also have new State Representative Eileen Horn here this evening. And this is Eileen's last meeting as our Sustainability Director. And she's in this transition period, and the reason for the point of preference is, as you all know, she has a new addition in her family, and I don't want to be accused of keeping her away from her newborn any longer than necessary. So, come on up.
Are you going to show us baby pictures? Excellent.
Good evening, Mayor. Commissioners. I'm excited to be here and asked to give this report. There's really not much to the report. I just wanted to talk to you all one more time. But basically, I just wanted to remind you of the basics of this project and let you all know the status. As you know, last February you approved the FCIP program, which is the State Facilities Conservation Improvement Project. The goals of the project were to improve energy efficiency and reduce our costs as a city, and also to meet some of our sustainability goals. Just a reminder of the financials, the estimated annual energy savings are $450,000 each year, and those energy savings are being used to pay off the bonds that were issued to fund the project. The total cost of the project was $11.3 million. It addressed a lot of CIP items and key infrastructure projects that we had, and we felt like it was the best use of taxpayer dollars. So the project is 95% complete. Over 40 city buildings and facilities have been improved. We've had several heavy mechanical projects, including boiler and chiller replacements, many light mechanical projects, 3 roof replacements, building automation and controls throughout city buildings. We did a comprehensive lighting retrofit to LEDs that I know you all are very aware of. That included outdoor security lighting, parking lot lights, park lighting, but also interior lighting in all of our buildings. We did several building envelope improvements, including new windows at City Hall and weatherization projects throughout city buildings. And then our Fire Station 5 has 100 kilowatts of solar PV installed, which now that there are no leaves on the trees, you can see when you drive by, and it's pretty exciting. We addressed many of the projects on the CIP. As I said, it was completed on time. We are on track, and there have been no cost increases, because part of the contract is that any cost increases would be eaten by 360 Energy Engineers, who's the company performing the performance contract. So here's some images of the key projects that have occurred over the last 8 months. It's kind of hard to tell, but the Indoor Aquatic Center received a lot of work, including ductwork and improvements to the ventilation, and that chiller is on the Art Center that's being replaced. I want to talk a little bit about lighting, because I know there have been a lot of citizen questions about that. So I included some before and after photos. So the one on the left is Centennial Park before the lighting retrofit, and the one on the right is Centennial Park after the lighting retrofit. So the thing I wanted to point out is you can see all the kind of light trespass on the left-hand side, where we're lighting parts of the park that weren't intended to be lit, and on the right, the light is focused and directional on the walking path. And I think that's one of the key opportunities and advantages with LEDs, is that they're directional, and therefore you can be more targeted in the light and not have it spill where you don't want it to. And then this is the community health building parking lot, the northeast parking lot. And so the left is before and the right is after. And the thing I wanted to point out here is you can see the shadows created on the left-hand side compared to the right, and I think that's an important thing to notice related to safety, because that's a key concern in our parking garages and parking lots for folks who are leaving our buildings late at night, and the LED lights really help us achieve better safety. So I thought those were interesting, and we have several of these for all of the projects, so if you want to see more, 360 Energy Engineers had a drone that went over the projects and captured images. So if you have specific questions or citizens asking specific questions about those projects, just let me know, and we can dig up some photos. So as a reminder of the process, this is the performance contracting process. We're now in steps 3 and 4 with system commissioning and measurement and verification. System commissioning means that 360 Energy engineers their team will go through all of the projects and make sure that each of the systems are performing as designed before they'll sign off on the project and kind of turn over the keys to us. And then we'll enter the measurement and verification stage. That measurement and verification stage starts 36 months after the project completion, which we anticipate will be early spring 2018. And for 36 months, we will independently monitor, and 360 Energy engineers will independently monitor the energy savings to make sure that the projects are performing the way they are intended to perform. We'll provide reports to you all, and we'll also use those same reports to document our green bonds with Brian and do our due diligence for the green bonds. So the way the performance contracting works is that if the actual energy savings fall short of what was projected and guaranteed, then 360 will reimburse the city for those for the difference. If we save more than anticipated, then it's a bonus to us. And the new sustainability director will be on board. I think the plan is the end of January, and we'll make sure that that new person comes and provides as many reports as you all need on the project.
It's a lot of work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
I had a question.
Sure.
You had indicated that both the 360 engineers as well as our staff are going to be monitoring it. Is that on 2 separate types of monitoring systems, or monitoring together, or?
So the way it works currently is that all of our bills are funneled into Energy Cap, which is an energy management software. And so we will be able to look at all of our accounts, and we'll be looking at the same data that they are. So we've shared the access to those meters with the engineers so that they can see the bills as they're uploaded. So we'll be looking at the same information from the utilities, but that way we can double check them if we have questions about their conclusions.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Great. Well, I wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to work for you for the past 7 years and for the city. And I think this project is just a fun one to end on, because I think it's a great example of what happens when we set sustainability goals, when we collaborate as departments to make them happen, and then we use some innovative financing tools and opportunities to make those work. So I know that there will be more of those in the future, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have served in this role. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
Good luck in your new endeavor.
Thank you. Your discussion a couple minutes ago had me questioning my sanity.
So I just wanted to mention on behalf of the staff, Eileen was great to work with. And not just internal to our staff, but externally, because we shared Eileen with the county, and she was very good at weaving between the two of us to kind of knit things together in terms of trying to get things done on a collective basis. So my appreciation to her, it worked out really well, and she, I think, maintained very high standards in the transition from the sustainability director to the state legislative position in terms of separating responsibilities and pretty much understanding that she couldn't maintain both roles. And not everybody would have come to the conclusions as quickly as she did, but she maintains very high ethical standards in the way she approaches things. So thank you. So continue on. We did have a discussion earlier about the report and how we're going to address the issue of persons being able to come forward, the public being able to come forward and comment on it. And so we'll come back with a recommendation for the commission to consider, including how someone could go about commenting on this. And we'll actually, a brief conversation with Diane, I think our thought is that we will go into the grayed out block on the agenda and add some suggestion as to how to make that work so that it's a little bit more efficient, so persons wishing to comment on the manager's report can do so. We already reported out in part on the summary that you have in front of you, but the last time we had this issue, we did refer Michael to hold on, Michael Allman, and wait until we got into the manager's report, and then we kind of had a snafu, and he wasn't allowed to speak to that issue, so I understand now what that point was all about. The issue that we addressed earlier about the remote located drop boxes for utility payment, there was some confusion and a suggestion that we were asking that this matter be resolved by the commission during the manager's report. That isn't what the recommendation was. The staff was recommending to me that I decide that issue. And so the staff, the management staff looked at that recommendation and said, we need to report this out during the manager's report so that if there's any concerns by the city commission, they could ask those questions, and what you did pretty much was refer it to an agenda item. There was never a suggestion on the part of staff that we were asking you to resolve the problem during the manager report item. The suggestion was that the manager make the decision and then inform you, and we cut off the manager's decision and loaded it into the manager's report so that at least you could have that conversation. So the other suggestion was that the manager's report be moved to the front of the agenda. And I think partly that was because they wanted to be able to comment on it. And I think we can come up with recommendations. You know, something's going to be in the front of the agenda and something's going to be at the back of the agenda. The thought process is that public comment should be up front. That used to be in the back. That got moved to the front. And that business items that notices specifically have been sent out for, public hearings are scheduled, those should be at the front parts of the agenda because they attract the most persons, usually persons that are having specific concerns to those particular items. I can count probably on less than 2 hands the number of people who consistently stay throughout the meeting. So by amending our agenda process and allowing early public comment as if the manager report was not an agenda item that they could comment on early, if they don't wish to stay throughout the whole meeting, they can do so. And then if they have a continuing problem with the manager's report, they can come right back the next meeting and discuss it then as well. And if there's something specific, and at the, you know, a lot of this is procedurally at the discretion of the mayor and whoever is sitting in the presiding position of running the meeting. We have a 3-minute time clock. Mayor Soden regularly allows people to reasonably breach over that a little bit to finish a point. I think that is an appropriate way for somebody presiding over a meeting to conduct the meeting. Now, when it starts pushing 4 minutes and 4.5 minutes and 5 minutes, you're probably going to have to circle back to whether that's how far you want to let it go. But I would say that you do give some discretion to somebody that's presiding over a meeting, you know, for reasonable interpretations, and I think that's been allowed at this table, and I think it should be continued. To the point where if you have an issue about a manager item and you ask a question about it, and somebody else from the public kind of wants to maybe add a point to it, that you can allow that. But I don't think you should give people necessarily 2 shots at the same item at different parts of the meeting. We either put it on public comment or not. And you allow it in one place or the other, unless there's something new that's come up, you know, during the manager report that comes from the table of the commission. So those are my comments about those particular issues, and I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. And the other items, if you want me to finish, I'll finish the report and then you can ask questions. We also had, during the course of the meeting, quite an extensive conversation about sales tax, and this is just the monthly report. Brian's here if you have any specific questions about that, or the next item, the monthly utility billing report. I did want to kind of report out briefly about this airport lease payment reconciliation, and this is a continuation of the discussion from the accounts receivable. And I think one of the things I point out is in the body of the report that all the T-hanger leases come up for renewal every March 31st, so that will be coming up this 2018. Staff has contracted with AUL appraisers to provide an appraisal of the lease rates. There was question whether our lease rates are competitive or whether we're charging too much or too little. Go ahead.
They're 2-year leases on T-hangers,
Is that what they are?
so they'd come up every 2 years. Okay, but I mean, to this point, they've been 2 years, so it comes up every other April.
Yeah, but I think coming up, we're talking about
Right.
going annually.
Yeah.
Additionally, staff has obtained T-hanger lease rates from other airports, and we attach that information. In January, staff will propose a new lease agreement and recommended rates which could be bid if the city desires. The timing would be to receive any new leases by the end of February, so current T-hanger leaseholders would get a 30-day notice if they needed to vacate their current T-hanger if they aren't happy with the new rates or with the conditions that change in the lease agreements. And we will be reviewing the language in those leases as well. Under the pavement management program, I'll just report the city has seen the implementation of a wide range of maintenance techniques from preventative maintenance measures to major rehab and reconstruction impacting the overall pavement condition index, which is what we use to evaluate pavement deterioration. The pavement management program aligns with our strategic plan and critical success factors of innovative infrastructure and asset management. Commissioner Boley asked the staff some pretty extensive questions last week about this report, and staff is developing the answers to that. And what I'd like to do is bring those questions and those answers, which I think will be of benefit to the entire commission and the public, back at the next manager's report. So we'll have that information for you. There were issues or concerns about integrating sidewalk maintenance and bike path improvements and so forth into the funding for street maintenance, and whether that was, the right way or wrong way to approach that. And we have some thoughts on that, which quite frankly may differ with the commission or the public, but we'll air those out and you can tell us your thoughts on those as well going forward. The monthly building permit is there. The next is the 2017 Kansas statewide freight plan. And the state was allowed to designate 75 miles of critical urban freight corridors. K10 from 59 to 70 was included as a critical urban freight corridor. And this designation of the 9-mile west leg of K10 means the corridor can be submitted for a fast lane grant for funding to construct improvements. I think that's a good sign, for those that would advocate for the improvement of the rest of 10. The fast lane grant process is similar to the old Tiger grant process in that it is highly competitive. And I guess that's all I'm going to comment, unless you have something to add to it, John. Okay. All right. We already talked about the FCIP program, and then the Certified Public Manager program, which is offered through, I believe, KU Public Management. This is the Kansas Certified Public Management Program. And part of our succession plan is to train the next corps of leaders that we're going to have here. This is a very extensive competitive program that's put on for public managers. And I want to report out that Casey Cooper, Shannon Parker, and Amy Rhodes, all from the police department, have now become certified public managers, as well as Jason Stowe in our Public Works Department, and John Williams in our IT department. So congratulations to all of them for successfully participating and completing that program. And finally, I just mentioned what's on the future meetings. On 12/27, as the mayor pointed out, we'll have a consent agenda items, hopefully non-controversial, and some bill paying, and that'll occur at 9 a.m.
Are we going to meet in the city commission room for that?
Yes.
So I think last year we did it upstairs.
Yeah, I think we can just meet down here. I think
Okay.
that's where the public's used to it, so
Okay.
it's probably best to
They
do
have
it that way.
cameras down here too.
The January 2nd meeting has been canceled, has been reported previously. And then on January 8th, the Monday meeting, we'll have the State of the City address, which I understand Mayor Soden you'll be delivering. The swearing in of our new city commission, and the election of the mayor and the vice mayor. And then we start back with a city commission orientation session on January 10th from 11:30 to 1:30 in the city commission room.
Is that for all 5 of us, or?
All 5 of you are invited to attend. And I don't think you've been conducting city orientation, city commission orientation sessions before a new session. I think it would be helpful for those that have not been through one to join us. Mike, I think you're probably excused.
I'll be there.
But
Is
obviously,
Coma-
our new
Old habits
commissioner
are hard to
will
break,
be
right,
invited
Mike?
as well. Yeah.
Is COMA, I assume, one of the things that'll be discussed?
Yes, it does. We get into some of the state laws, some of the projects that we're working on, kind of the relationship between the manager's office and the commission, how to file a complaint that a citizen delivers to you, what you should expect in terms of how we respond to that, how we document those things, that sort of
I
thing.
don't think we had that, did we? No.
No, I'm
That
pretty
does
sure,
sound very helpful.
I'm pretty sure you haven't had that. And then on January 16th, we'll be back and we'll have the commercial recycling business plan to be reviewed. Public hearing on vacation of pedestrian easement. And of course, we continued the item tonight on the vacation of some other easements. And then the charter ordinance number 45 regarding alternative construction methods that we had brought up previously. That will be, tentatively, that's coming back. Work sessions, those are to be determined. The first one will be sometime in February, that second meeting in February.
What is that about? I wanted to ask about that. Emergency operations training, what is that concerning?
I think he was wanting to cover the elected officials portion of the NIMS.
See, technically, you're all supposed to be trained in, what is it, the National Incident Management System. And so you all have very specific roles as elected officials in disaster situations, emergency situations. And there's a training program that you're expected to participate in. And I don't know if he's intending to run that program that night, but maybe just introduce it to you because.
It's where you learn about all the secret tunnels we're not supposed to talk about.
And you get tested as well, okay?
We're tested all the time, Tom.
Yeah. This is actually one you'll be graded on. But I guess you get graded too, don't you? Yeah.
You learn the secret knock.
It's kind of a pass-fail grade.
That's
Anyway, that's it.
All right, so that means we're on to.
No, do you remember we were gonna allow questions?
What?
We're gonna allow questions.
Are we calling for public comment on the city manager's report?
Yeah.
Is this what we're doing?
That's your discretion, but I think this evening.
I think
because
it's
we
more
didn't-
appropriate to do it now than at the beginning in public comment. So, is there any public comment on the city manager's report? Still got a 3-minute time limit.
Yeah, I'm only gonna, it's not exactly on what Mr. Marcus said, but I am gonna be mailing you something. Because when we start talking about these certified trainings and the best practices and all the rest, that what I know really well is the field of mental health. And I know that sometimes we can have a certain type of training, like certified crisis training just for your police officers. And then when you say you're doing for all of them, that's not best practices. The practice itself is just 2 volunteers that want to do it, you know, so you're spending a lot of money and you're really not doing best practices. So a little bit the manager was talking about all these really important certified training processes that, you know, it leads into having more, you know, best practices going, that it's always a mistake that sometimes that training is just one part of the piece. And when you don't have the rest of the pieces, you really don't have the whole thing. I hope that was understandable.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that email.
Yeah, I'm going to mail it to you. I'm a mailer, so I'll get your address.
Excellent. Thank you.
I like to color and underline things, you know, and make it live when I'm an artist.
All right. I like the sound of this. Any other public comment on the city?
I just had a clarification that I think the city manager said that he's going to bring a recommendation forward on the protocol that will be adopted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other? Come on, KT. Melinda? All right, come on. Let's all do this first time.
Thank you very much for clearing up the issue about the city manager's report.
Excellent.
It's kind of been out there, and I think we're well on the way to everyone being on the same page.
Thank you, Melinda. All right. So I think we're on to calendar. Any items that we need to add? Nothing? I move we adjourn.
Second. Oh,
On the calendar item, I think we need to wish everybody a safe and happy holiday.
Absolutely.
second.
Okay?
All right. Motion made by Mayor Seddon, seconded by Commissioner Larson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Happy
Motion passes-
holidays, folks.
Motion passes unanimously. We're all done. Sure.
Because I'm going to